This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
That I agree with. And this is the only part of your take that I agree with, that I find interesting a little bit.
Yeah. You said that about like 3 or 4 things, but okay.
You kept saying that I kept saying
Yeah.
that I find this interesting. And then I actually went back and listened, which I don't often do, but I did to that part because I felt myself doing that.
And because it was good radio.
And I absolutely said like 4 times about 4 different things that I was claiming wasn't an interesting thing.
Somebody's going to be watching some North Carolina football next year come the fall.
To be fair, like it's Bill Belichick. Like I work for the Patriots. Like it's obvious that I would be interested in Bill.
That was the whole take. That was it.
Okay.
It's Bill Belichick's putting a team on the field. How is that not interesting?
Yeah.
That was the take.
Yeah, but that's me. Like I'm talking about
I think some Patriots fans
Mo,
feel
Dick,
the
and
same.
Larry. You know, like I'm not talking about me. Like I'm the target audience for anything Bill Belichick.
Look,
like,
is an NFL exclusive fan in
Boston
anywhere besides New England going to watch? Maybe not. I think Patriots fans are going to be interested.
Yeah,
because it is Bill Belichick.
Yeah, I mean that's valid. That's valid.
That was the whole take.
No, you didn't. You were gushing a little bit about college football.
All right, calm down, Felger.
It's bothering me. I do. That is.
It has gone right up Felger's tailpipe.
That has made my week. Felger just constantly ripping you and calling you Barthy, and all of it is.
Well, he calls me Barthy one way or the other.
Yeah, it's just fantastic. Hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's, right? Toyota.
Yes.
Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV. Go to buyatoyota.com.
No, you didn't do it that time. Toyota.
It's Toyota's official
There you
website
go.
for deals for the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places.
When
And
does Jordan Love get his Toyota deal?
I didn't know about this.
So I'll pull up the numbers for you. Do the second read. I'll pull up the
Easy
numbers.
to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. Just save it for a little while. Okay, I do want to talk some Patriots, and then we can get into the
Well, I was trying to
nonsense.
line it up with the read. I'm trying to help the sponsor there.
Okay, what do you got?
So Jordan Love during Toyotathon. So it's a, what's it called? It's an anomaly.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find the actual distribution of the numbers. Jordan Love in his career is like night and day a different quarterback during Toyotathon.
Okay, but isn't that just lining up with
He's better late in the year.
late in the year and the Packers are starting to roll? Like that's
Well, it's not just this year, it's career. So Jordan Love, touchdown to interception ratio, not during Toyotathon, for his career.
okay.
29 and 25. 29 touchdowns, 29 picks.
Okay.
Jordan Love and 3,200 yards. Jordan Love during Toyotathon, which is fewer games.
Yeah.
3,200 yards, 26 touchdowns, only 2 picks.
He's an MVP of the league when it's Toyotathon.
Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Jordan Love this year during Toyotathon. 69 completion percentage. He's averaging about 10 yards per attempt, 1,100 yards in 5 games, 8 touchdowns, 1 pick, 120 passer rating.
A little bit of Jordan Love and Drake May. I know we make like 17 different comparisons. I feel like for Drake May, it's Josh Allen, it's Justin Herbert. Like I could see a little bit of Jordan Love in there as well. But I want to go.
We need to figure out what Drake May's. Like Jordan Love has Toyotathon. Hopefully it's not Subaru Summer for Drake May. That doesn't help us at all. What are the other ones? Isn't there like Trucktober or something?
That doesn't really help either. Need
Well, if you put them together, because Trucktober...
Something in January, maybe, something December.
So Toyotathon ends, the last Sunday of the regular season is the last Sunday during Toyotathon.
Okay.
So Toyotathon does not include the playoffs.
Okay.
Yet.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe he gets a deal with Toyota and he gets them to push that, but...
I love it. All right, let's get back to the task at hand and talk a little bit about the Patriots. I understand that this has been a week. This has been a week coming off this Cardinals game, and I understand a lot of the criticisms for the Patriots and for the Patriots coaching staff, but as you can imagine, Alex, the one thing that kind of just bothers me a little bit about the discourse around Gerard Mayo right now is how much focus there is on press conferences. Like that piece of it to me really just kind of like it misses the mark a little bit. And I want to preface that by saying, like, this is not excuse making for Gerard, because I'm about to tell you how I really feel, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I just, when I watch and listen and hear and read people that are going over all of his press conferences and all this kind of stuff and being super critical of the things that he says or the things that he implies or whatever, I just truly feel that it is like low-hanging fruit. Like it's we don't want to actually talk about the actual football of what's going on with the Patriots, but did you hear what he said about the press conference after the game, right? Like it's that sort of thing. And as a show that's all about the actual weeds and the X's and O's, I want to talk about that stuff because my biggest issues with the Patriots right now is what's going on tape. It has nothing to do with what's going on at press conferences, right? And one of the things, with press conferences too, Dan Campbell got dragged. Like he got absolutely killed for the kneecaps thing.
Yeah.
If you had, when I saw that introductory press conference by Dan Campbell and he did the kneecaps thing, the bit, right?
I liked it.
I thought for sure that guy was going to fail. Like, me. I was like, oh, get this hardo out of here.
I thought he was going to fail before that.
I thought for sure he was going to fail at that press conference. If you asked me that day, do I think Dan Campbell's going to be a good head coach? I would tell you no. I would also say the same thing about Bill. Like, Bill, the way he conducted himself at press conferences was criticized for 25 years. And then to go even to in-game stuff, in-game coaching, like Andy Reid was dragged for game management
rightfully so
for 15 years until he got Patrick Mahomes and he just didn't matter, right? And plus now the Chiefs are great late in games.
Yeah.
Like they're probably the best team in the league in close games in the fourth quarter. My point by bringing up all those guys, and I know that those are all the rosy, success stories of bad first year, turn it around sort of thing. But my point of bringing up all those guys is that I feel like those elements of head coaching do get better. Like if you're a good coach, I think you learn how to time management. I think you learn press conference etiquette. I think you learn all of these CEO type elements of being a head coach. And I would be more than willing to take on those growing pains with Gerard Mayo and this coaching staff when it comes to all that kind of stuff if I thought that the team was coached well on Sundays. And I just don't feel like I'm seeing enough of that. And
sure.
You can jump in. I have some more stuff I want to unpack from there, but
no, I'll echo something Felger said this week. Like I care more about, so the comment was it, you said that, not me, right?
Yeah.
Was in regards to essentially not being able to pick up a yard on 3rd and 1, 4th and 1 at a crucial point in the game.
Right.
I care a lot more that they didn't pick up the yard.
Yeah.
Than the way Gerard Mayo addressed it. It's just a winning cures all thing.
Yeah.
Like, look at Joe Mazzulla. Joe Mazzulla says weird stuff in press conferences all the time. He said yesterday he doesn't watch the NBA.
Yeah.
But the team's a wagon, and we just kind of laugh about it.
Yeah.
So now, obviously, Joe Mazzulla, it's not to compare Joe Mazzulla and Gerard Mayo. Joe Mazzulla has built already in a short time a very impressive resume. But the point being, at the end of the day, they're losing football games, and everything becomes more frustrating when you're losing. And I'm with you. That's not to say there aren't things to clean up in the press conference. There certainly are. If he's giving, the 98 Michael Jordan of press conference, right? The 07 Tom Brady of press conferences.
Yeah.
And they
96,
still 96 Jordan, thank you.
Yeah.
The 2000 Ken Griffey Jr. press conferences.
Yeah.
And they're still only winning 3 games a year. I really won't care.
Right.
That doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah.
Win the games. And I'm with you. Like, if you want to talk about what's being said at the press conference, I get it. I understand why it's a story. I'm not faulting anybody for talking about it.
Me too.
I guess my point is more, and especially on this show, what we do, how about the questions that are being asked that are leading to these answers?
Yeah.
Right? What's going wrong on the field? Because if you start fixing some of that, if you can pick up, they had 2 chances to gain 1 yard convincingly, and I still think there was a bad spot on the 3rd down.
Yeah.
But they had 2 chances to pick up 1 yard convincingly and couldn't do it. You pick up that yard, the question never happens.
Right.
So fix what's happening on the field, and I think the rest takes care of itself. I don't think, he needs to be better in press conferences. Could he be better? Yeah. I'm not saying he couldn't. It doesn't do anything if the product on the field doesn't change.
Yeah, I just think that not a lot of people want to have the conversations of what's going actually wrong with the defense and the offensive line and the play calling. And that's what I want to unpack, because I don't want to talk about press conferences.
Right.
When we came off of the Colts game, I didn't want to talk about, did he manage the game correctly? And did
Now,
his
that's in-game stuff. This is where you lose me. That is in-game football coaching.
Sure.
That matters.
But it matters, but
you don't want to talk about it because it's not nerd stuff.
But my point is that I would allow some grace for him to improve in that area if I thought that defensively they were putting out a good product every single week. And the reason why I bring that up is because, all the coaches that you hate that I love, Kyle Shanahan, those types of guys, like, no matter what happens with Shanahan, who also tends to be a little bit snarky at press conferences too.
Yeah, remember when they asked him about Jimmy Garoppolo? It's like, will he be on the team next week? And Shanahan was like, I don't know if anybody will be alive next week.
Right. Yeah, like he's also a little weird.
They all are. It's a high-stress environment.
Has a little Missoula in him, Kyle Shanahan.
Well, except for the winning championships part.
Okay, I saw that coming after I said it.
Was I wrong?
So here's the thing, though. Like, Kyle Shanahan brings one of the best schemes on the offensive side of the ball to the game every single Sunday, right? Like, that's the trade-off, right? The trade-off is, you might get some quirky press conferences. Yeah, you might get, people like you, the time management, the clock management, not running the ball late in games to milk the clock. Like, that stuff's going to drive everybody crazy. But every single week, the 49ers and Kyle Shanahan have a chance to win the game because his scheme is fantastic. It's one of the best.
Every week they have a chance to do it, and they do it about half the time. I would argue the management thing plays into that too, though.
Yeah.
Look at a guy like Mike Tomlin, who he has his intricacies in press conferences. Remember a couple weeks ago, he wouldn't call Lamar Jackson Lamar. He kept saying Mr. Jackson. That was kind of a weird thing.
Yeah.
Every week, Mike Tomlin's team is going to come out prepared.
Right.
Play sound. It's not about the scheme. The scheme's good, but play sound, fundamental football, and he's going to do his part. And that's not a joke about him nearly tripping Jacoby Ford down the sideline.
Right.
Like, I don't remember the last time I was watching the Steelers and go for it or kick decision or timeout usage or clock management. Like, Mike Tomlin's as buttoned up as anybody in that regard.
Yeah.
So the game management thing can apply to that too.
Yeah.
Again, it's just if the product on the field is better, one, you're not going to be in a position to have some of these, because some of the questions he gets asked, and this is true for just any coach that's losing, you're going to get questions that are difficult to answer because at the end of the day, as a coach, you don't want to put down your own team. You don't want to put down yourself, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're losing, and somebody has to be at fault. You can't just go out there and shucks it. So, and that's where some of these answers come from. That's where some of these bad answers come from. There are certain questions. This isn't just a Mayo thing. This is just how it works, where certain questions, there is no good answer. You want to create a situation where you don't have those kinds of questions? Win football games.
Yeah.
Win games. That's how you fix it.
Yeah. So looking at the football, I want to start defense, actually. And this is the side of the ball that troubles me the most because this is supposed to be Gerard Mayo's side of the ball, right? Like, when the Houston Texans hired DeMeco Ryans, there were questions about whether or not he was going to get the OC hire right, he was going to get the offense right, the quarterback right, and all those kinds of things. They've done a nice job on that side of the ball with Stroud and Bobby Slowick. But going into it, there were questions. There were never questions about the Texans defense because that was DeMeco Ryans' specialty. Same thing with the Patriots and Gerard Mayo. And when I look at them statistically on defense, it is alarming how much they have just fallen off a cliff on that side of the ball.
I mean, you could argue between the two units, what's been the better unit this year, offense or defense?
I would say the offense is certainly more promising.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's statistically any better.
I think it is.
It might be slightly.
Well,
but
your little metric, they're better.
I don't think so.
EPA, yeah, they are.
Oh, maybe by EPA.
I saw that this week. That's what other? Oh, DVOA.
DVOA. I didn't know which one you were going with.
Oh,
yeah,
they're the same thing to me. In one ear, out the other.
So they're defensively right now. The number everybody throws out there is they're 30th in DVOA defensively. Yeah. They were 9th last year, right? Like that.
Right.
That's always it. But I wrote down some of their other numbers for the show today. I mean, they're 31st in pass DVOA. They're
defensively.
Okay. They're 24th on third down defensively. They're 23rd in the red zone defensively. Like, this is just.
Are they that high in the red zone?
Yeah, but
I thought it was gonna be lower.
When you look at defensive coaching, I always look at pass defense third down red zone. Like, I think those are the three biggest things that you need to be good on defense, and they're bottom of the league in all three. And the big thing that I look at with this defense right now is a combination. I think it's one, they don't play fundamentally sound defense anymore. They don't play blocks well. They don't take angles well. They don't tackle well. They don't, their mechanics up front, like there's questions about fits and things like that. Like, are guys in the right gaps? Are guys in the right spots? Are they getting into the right alignments? Pre-snap is something that Jabril Peppers spoke about after the game on Sunday, that he didn't feel like they did that often enough, consistently enough. I mean, they're on the goal line and there's just nobody in gaps, right? James Conner is just walking in for touchdowns. I get it's the goal line. Like, you're probably not going to stop him anyways, but it would at least be nice to make him go through somebody, right, to get into the end zone. So you see a lot of stuff that I would label controllable. Like, I think all these things, assignments, being in the right gaps, being fundamentally sound, like you can even if you don't have great roster talent, like you can control your own house, right? Like you can control those things. And a lot of the time, especially on the defensive side of the ball, I feel like you can overachieve on defense by just being structurally sound. Like just having 11 guys playing the right defense, playing the right gaps, tackling well. Like you can get away with the fact that you don't have, the 85 Bears of talent on the defensive side of the ball if you're doing those types of things. And the Patriots defense right now just isn't doing those types of things. And I think Gerard Mayo's spread really thin as a first-time head coach, and that his imprint hasn't necessarily been on this defense as much as he expected. And I think DeMarcus Covington, it was a pretty big promotion for DeMarcus Covington, and I think we were all excited about his prospects as a coach moving forward, but I think you're seeing just what happens when you put two guys in a position that are both green, right? Like that both weren't totally ready for the job yet. And I don't know where they go on that side of the football because what they did against Arizona on Sunday was way too simplistic. Like the Cardinals just undressed them with little motions and things like that the entire time. It wasn't like the Rams style of motion where they were motioning at the snap to create space in the defense. They were using coverage indicators. Like they're just motioning a guy across. If somebody went with him, it was man-to-man. If they didn't, it was zone. And Kyler just had answers, right? No matter which the coverage was. And he was just seeing it pre-snap. All right, they're in man-to-man. I have Trey McBride on Del Pettis. That's a matchup that we're going to win, and I'm going to hit him for 29 yards on third down. Like those types of things just consistently happened in this game where they were just beat. And I don't know if it's simple as get everybody back next year that was supposed to be here. Get 100% of Christian Barmore, get 100% of Jabril Peppers, Kyle Duggar, Juwan Bentley. Like I can
get that pass rusher to replace Matthew Judon.
Yeah, like I can hear that argument. Like if you want to use the, I want to call it injury excuse for the defense or availability excuse. Like I can hear that argument and say that Water will find its level next season. But what concerns me the most, and this is really on both sides of the ball, but since we're starting with the defense, there's just a lack of creativity when it comes to scheme to try to do anything that like gets the offense on its heels.
Yeah, and what's troubling about that is just to play it off the offense, the Patriots offense. We talked about the Patriots offense also being maybe a little more simplified, and we'll talk about this later in the show. Alex Van Pelt actually had an interesting comment on this today, but it almost sort of makes sense for the offense to be simplified, maybe not to this extent, but you have a rookie quarterback, you have a line that is not remotely consistent, like they can't go right to a 5. Yeah. Right? On defense, you have veterans, you have guys that have been here, you have players at key positions that in theory allow you to complicate things more. Talking about a guy like Christian Gonzalez, right?
Yeah.
So I can understand why the offense might be. Thanks. I can understand why the offense might be a little more simplified, right?
Right.
The defense, they brought everybody back. They should have been starting, and we've done this the last few years with the defense. I've talked this up where you bring everybody back. You don't really have to do a day one install in the spring because everybody's on page. Everybody's on that page from last year. There should be more levels to this defense. I get they've lost guys due to injuries, but even a lot of the backups are guys that were here last year.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good point by you. I just think the how simple the defense is right now And then you get to the execution on top of that. The simplification is supposed to help the execution. It's not, but how simple it is right now is kind of eye-opening.
Every single team, when they come into a game against the Patriots, they are not schematically challenged. Like, they don't get put in binds by the Patriots right now on either side of the ball where, like they're doing something that's really innovative or really creative that we're going to have a plan against. Like, we're going to have a plan against the blitz package or a plan against some sort of wrinkle on the defensive side of the football, like you might see with Mike McDonald or Brian Flores or like one of these coaches that do dial things up. I mentioned D'Amico Ryans earlier in the show. Like, those guys are constantly challenging the opposing offense schematically, and I don't see that with this defense right now. I see them being very vanilla and very easy to decipher, and that puts you in a position where your players just kind of have to make plays. And Christian Gonzalez is sort of the only guy in that secondary that truly is capable of down in and down out making plays on the ball. And so it really puts you in a tough position. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up defensively that we can move over to the offense is, they've always been a two-gapping system. Like, I think they're always going to be a two-gapping system. I understand why. I understand that it has its advantages and things like that. But in order to be a great two-gapping team, the Mike linebacker needs to be a sledgehammer. Like, he just needs to be a Jawan Bentley, a Dante Hightower,
even a Landon Roberts.
I brought him up the other day. Even like going back a ways to Ted Johnson, right? Like, you always had somebody in the middle of the defense that could take a guard on and put that guy on his heels, right?
Yeah.
And now it's nothing against their linebackers, Jelani Tavai, Christian Ellis, Sione Taki. Those guys just aren't that.
They're not that kind of player. Like, that's not who they are. They're coverage linebackers.
Right. So,
well, Tavai's played that role at times this year, but overall, your point stands.
The biggest thing, though, is that when they have a guy like that, the biggest reason why that is so key to the defense is that it compresses space, right? Like, all you're doing is you're bottling up the runner. Like, there's a lot of times if you go and we watch Jawan Bentley that he doesn't actually make the tackle, but he's compressing the space and he's blowing up the blocking scheme so that somebody else can come in and make the tackle, right? Or multiple people can come in and make the tackle. So what's happening a lot of the time, and I thought the 53-yarder by James Conner was a great example of this. They have the puller coming across. Marcus Jones is like the nickel on that side of the field. He does his best, but like, he's 5'8", 180.
He's just not. That's not his play to make.
Right. So he tries his best to hold up the puller, but Jabril Peppers is put in a spot where there's just a lot of room for James Conner to make a cut. Right. Like, there's just not anybody compressing the space so that he can just take him on straight on. Like, James Conner essentially has a two-way go. Like, he could have gone around him both ways.
Right. And
so now if you're Jabril Peppers, you're just kind of sitting there like waiting for him to declare, and it's just really difficult to then make that stop and make that play. So I look at a lot of the things that are happening from a run defense standpoint as like, okay, well, your front mechanics might need to change. Like, you can't be a two-gapping defense if you don't have the horses to go out there and be an effective two-gapping defense. Now, on that particular play, they did try to run like a little bit of a stunt, like to get a little bit more penetration, but like, in general, I just think it's really difficult to play a two-gapping defense without a really, really good, hard-hitting Mike linebacker. Like, even like guys like freaking Terez Hall, like, who was like on the team in 2020. Like, he wasn't a great player, but he could take on a guard.
That was the one thing I liked Terez Hall, because it was the one thing he did.
Yeah.
He lowered the hammer. By the way, he was here last year.
Yeah, I remember that. I liked Terez Hall too, and that was the main reason. Is like, you saw the role that he could play in the defense. Was he like prime Ray Lewis? No, but you saw a role. Okay, this is what he does for this defense. So I just wonder, when it comes to like tweaks and things like that on the defense side of the ball, if there was ever or is ever a consideration that two gapping with this personnel, like even looking at defensive end. Now, they have Barmore back now, but like, is Daniel Aquale like a true two-gapping defensive end? No, he would be much better suited if you let him get into a gap and get up the field a little bit. So I know I'm picking on a lot of schematic stuff with the defense, but I I understand that people have this overarching thing. We get a lot of calls and emails being like, look at the talent on the roster, right?
Well, I guess I was talking to somebody about this earlier. Like, for all the criticism of the coaching, and I'm not saying that it's not warranted.
Yeah.
Like, we talked a lot at the beginning of the year about the roster and the shape it's in.
Yeah.
And I understand that, that's been talked about, and that's more of an off-season topic and all that. It didn't change over the last few weeks. So I just, like, the coaching stuff shouldn't overshadow the talent on the roster. Not that it's not fair to talk about.
Defensively, I truly believe that they are not the 30th worst defense in the league on paper.
That's fair.
I truly believe that. Now, do I think that they're an elite defense on paper? No. And were they ever going to be? Probably not. Maybe if they had everybody healthy and running at 100%, they could have been, an average to above average defense like they were last year, right? Like, I think that's realistic in terms of their talent on the roster. Now they're probably middling at best in terms of talent, but they're not 30th. And they have a number one corner. They have a young player in Keon White that can get after quarterbacks on third down. They have guys that I always like that are those hard hat, lunch pail guys, Godshaw, Wise, Tavai, Duggar, Peppers. Like, these guys have been around and played a lot of football in the NFL, and they've done it a lot better than what we've seen them do it this year. So that's the troubling thing for me on defense, and I just don't know where you go with that if it's not going to be Gerard fixing it, right? Like, if it's not going to be Gerard fixing it, like, I've heard a lot of, well, why don't they just get the Ben McAdoo a defense? Well, isn't that supposed to be
we talked about this last week.
Right? So you're in a tough spot in there on defense. Moving over to the offense, there's a lot of things that were said today at Alex Van Pelt's press conference. I think a lot of them are relatable to what I was going to say anyways. But on the offensive side of the ball, I really just felt like it's kind of a double whammy here. In terms of this game against Arizona. One, I don't think they were very well prepared for this game against the Cardinals. It was a different opponent. They don't play a ton. It's one of those weird, like, in other conference, like, every 4 years type of games, right?
Yeah.
And I think that they got caught off guard by a few things that Arizona did. The number one thing, Arizona is one of these teams. We talked about the Colts being sort of a do-what-you-do defense, and we talked about the Bills really being that. Like, the Bills are really a pretty straightforward defense too. The Cardinals, especially up front, they change a lot with their fronts, right? Like, they run a lot of different varieties of different fronts, and they are constantly, like, shifting the line, like, right before the snap, and they do a lot of things. And some of it with guys like Vidarian Lowe, like, he just didn't block the guy, right? Like, I get that. But a lot of it, there was a lot of times in this game, at least 3 or 4 times, where Vidarian Lowe was just, like, blocking air. Like, he was just blocking an open gap. And I'm thinking to myself, like, how is this happening, right? Like, how are these things happening? And talking to some of the linemen, it sounded like they were a little bit off with, like, their points and stuff like that of, okay, you're going to have this gap. Well, what happens when they shift and there's nobody in that gap? Right? Now who am I blocking? Right. And a lot of that happened. And the other name that came up was Budda Baker. They had a tough time declaring what Budda Baker was when he was in the box. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? Is he on the tight end? Is he blitzing? Right? Like, what is he? And these are the types of things that you go into a game. And, the center comes to the line of scrimmage, and the center calls out the front. 4 down, 3 down, right? Like, they call out the front, even odd. And then they have rules of, like, this is how we're treating these players, right? So these are the linemen have, 5 guys that they can block. So these are the 5 guys the linemen are responsible for. If this guy comes, if that guy comes, it's on the quarterback, it's on, the back and blitz pickup. Like, you have different rules. And I thought in this game what they really struggled with was that sort of coordination of what are we calling this? What are we declaring Budda Baker? How are we setting the mic if this is the way that they're tilted? Like, those types of things. And again, I go back to what I said before about controllables. Like, that's a controllable, right?
Yeah.
Like, that is not, Vidarian Lowe whiffed trying to block Brandon Browning. That is a controllable aspect of the game that even if you have a plan going into the game and it's a bad plan, if you're all on the same page, then it might still work, right? Like that's really how a lot of these things go down. Like it could, in hindsight, you could look back on that and be like, I don't know how it worked. Like that was kind of an awful plan, but we got away with it because everybody was on the same page and everybody was doing the same thing. In this game, there was way too much of confusion up front from the offensive line. They don't have the talent to get away with that. Like they're not talented enough in that group to have mental mistakes and lapses and bad snaps and things like that. So that was a big problem in this game. And the other thing that I would point to, I do not believe they expected Arizona to play as much man coverage early on in this game as they did. The Cardinals play a lot of zone. They're one of the more zone-heavy teams. They bucked that trend this week by playing a lot of man-to-man early in the game. They were 50% man in the first quarter in this game was Arizona. They played a lot more zone as the game wore on because the score, they were just kind of keeping things in front of them. But they came out and they played man-to-man, and the Patriots got fooled by a lot of their man-to-man coverages into running things that weren't going to work into that defense, the Brady thing, right? Like, are you snapping the ball in an effective play against that defense?
So you have the answers to the test.
Right. So they, big one to me, just breaking down the whole opening drive. I've heard a lot that they moved the ball on the opening drive. If you actually go and watch the opening drive, it was a mess. And they moved the ball because they had some things go their way within that mess. Very first play of the game is an 11-yard completion to Hunter Henry. Their spacing's off on the route combination. Jalen Polk doesn't clear out. He actually had Austin Hooper for a bigger play if the spacing had been correct. They had bad spacing on that play. The next play, they gained 16 yards on a little swing screen to Ramondre Stevenson. Ben Brown rolls the snap to Drake May, and he just gets the play off on the screen to Ramondre. Then you have a holding call on 3rd and 5, and then the 3rd and 10 that they got off, Drake checked into a screen when he shouldn't have checked into a screen, right? So, like, even then, it was like, watching it back, I was like, well, I should have seen this coming. Like, yes, they got some yards out of the first drive, but they really were not buttoned up from the get-go.
No, they weren't. It was all over the place. To go back to something you said about Budda Baker, that stood out to me because they talked about during the week, like, Budda Baker is a guy we need to be aware of. They use him differently. They use him as a linebacker. They use him as a safety. They use him as a corner. We need to know where he is, identify him, right? Things like that. And that wasn't there. On the offensive line, too, it looked discombobulated.
Yeah.
To your point, I just think there were too many guys. And there were the talent gap was there, right? Vidarian Lowe gets blown by a couple times on those 2 short yardage situations. Layden Robinson gets stood up. But I think what you see is guys try to overcompensate for that. And that's where some of the, I don't know that I'd call it freelancing, but like
mental
being
mistakes
on a different page, comes from.
Yeah, you look at, I hate to bring up like all like the yesteryears all the time, but like with Scarnecchia, how many linemen did Scarnecchia take, that we were like, who? And then but it worked because at least they were in the right spots. 5 guys, same set of eyes. Right. And so even if they didn't have great talent at a spot or two, they were able to get by because they were so well prepared going into the games. And that is very noticeable in this film. I'm not saying it's every single week, but in this film, it was very noticeable that they don't play the Cardinals a lot. And I don't think that they were fully prepared. I also think if you watch the Cardinals against certain teams, they play bad teams differently than they play good teams. So the numbers are kind of skewed because, against good teams, they might be a little bit less aggressive than they are against bad teams. The other thing I wanted to bring up offensively and kind of segue a little bit into what Alex Van Pelt said today at his press conference, which I thought was like one of the most interesting press conferences of the year. There's a lot to unpack there.
We learned a lot. Like, it was, in terms of being educational, it was good. It was... I think I received it more positively than you did.
Maybe. I like Alex Van Pelt at press conferences. I think he does a nice job.
I think so too.
I think he's professional. Like, and you can clearly tell that he's been experienced at this. The one thing though that I can't let go, and it's bigger to me than just the 3rd and 4th and 1. Like, that's sort of the microcosm of it, but it's bigger to me than that. And it really. I always kind of felt this way, but it really hit me hard watching the Bills offense this week a little bit and studying the Bills on film. The way that Joe Brady leverages all of Josh Allen's talent like his mobility, his arm talent, but especially his mobility into their scheme to threaten defenses and to manipulate defenses and create space in the defense and all this kind of stuff and numbers advantages for the offense. Like those types of things that all it is just like Josh Allen needs to be accounted for, right? Like it's not even something that's like so revolutionary. Like they're doing a lot of the same stuff that they did, Brady did at LSU in 2019, right? Like this isn't like super revolutionary, but every single play that they call for Josh Allen has some sort of way of leveraging his mobility against the defense, right? Like it's some sort of threat. They run that tackle trap play all the time where they pull the backside tackle and then they have an option, right? He's reading the front side. Does the end crash? Does the end stay? Sometimes they'll put a bubble screen attached to it too so he can throw it out there. And then they obviously have the run to James Cook on the inside. All those things are doing is accounting for numbers. And so what you see with Buffalo's offense is they're hat on a hat in the running game constantly, right? Like they just have the numbers to the run side of the play for James Cook. When you watch the 41-yard touchdown that he had against the Detroit Lions, he walks into the end zone because they literally just have a dude for every dude that's on the Detroit Lions that's to that side of the field, besides the deep safety in the middle of the field is the one guy that James Cook has to make miss. But once he's moving full speed at 10, 12, 15 yards down the field, it becomes pretty easy for a talented back like him to make the free safety miss in the middle of the field. So you have these advantages that Allen's mobility has in the offense, moving the pocket, right? Like even from under center, like having boots and having nakeds and things like that, like all of these things that they've built into this scheme. And then you watch the Patriots and they just don't do any of those kinds of things with Drake May. And they don't use Drake May's full assembly of powers, right? Like it's
right.
It's like they use a superhero comparison. Like they don't use all of his superpowers at their disposal. They don't leverage these things against the defense. He's their best playmaker on offense. He's the best thing they got going for him, and they're asking him to play to like 75% of his strengths by not running him. So today with Alex Van Pelt, he had a lot to say about this sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing to me was that he mentioned earlier on in his press conference that they want to have a concerted effort, I should say, of getting Drake May through these last 3 games healthy. And the natural follow-up for me was, if you guys were 11-3 instead of 3-11, would you be running him in these situations?
Right.
And his answer was yes. So that tells me that the Patriots are basically telling us that they have gone out of their way in order to protect Drake May from injury, to not run the offense at its full boat, right?
Yeah.
And to take some of these quarterback runs off the table until they're more competitive as a team. But my only sort of clapback at that is, how do you expect to be a competitive team if your quarterback is being held back, right? Like how that's what makes the Bills the Bills. Like that's what makes them unstoppable. That's what makes the Baltimore Ravens unstoppable. So that's what makes Jaden Daniels and the Commanders a playoff team.
It's funny you use those 3 examples, because the Bills have had trouble getting over the hump, in part because Josh Allen is so banged up at the end of every year. The Ravens have had trouble getting over the hump because Lamar is not Lamar come the playoffs, because he's taken such a beating. The Commanders have fallen off ever since Shane Daniels suffered that rib injury. So I think you kind of get your answer there as to why they're worried about it.
That's a fair point.
Because and Van Pelt, like he almost sounded shell-shocked today when he's talking about, I know what comes with the quarterback run game. I remember losing a quarterback for the year in Cleveland.
Yeah.
And you look, I think Mahomes is fine, but in theory, you look what the Chiefs are going through with Mahomes right now, things like that. So I've talked about this. I don't think the answer to how much you run the quarterback who can be a factor in the run game is 0. I think you just take some of the risk that comes with him getting hurt because of what that can add to your offense. On not running him right now, I think it's glass half full, glass half empty when you look at Van Pelt's approach. On one hand, and this goes back to conversations we had, it's very similar to conversations we had about when to start Drake May.
Right.
And, is he going to help you win more games right now in the immediate? Yes, but is that ultimately what's best for the organization? you could argue glass half empty. I don't care what the record is. Win games.
Yeah.
That's your job. Go out there, do everything you can to win every single game on the schedule. You could look at it glass half full and say, Van Pelt, where's his job security at? And he's still... So I think not running Drake May right now they could have worked in a quarterback sneak last week, but as a whole, I think not running Drake May right now makes sense. We know he can do it. It's not the kind of thing that you're necessarily going to get better at with reps. I think it's just an instinct thing. Every run is different. He can work on that in practice. That's not something where he needs to do it in games a lot to get. I also don't know how much better he needs to get at it. He's a pretty dang good runner when he takes off on a scramble, right? Yeah, sure, some things with the read option and seeing that better, but again, you can simulate that in practice. I get wanting him to get through the year healthy. I've said this since the beginning. The worst thing that could happen is he suffers some kind of long-term injury and loses development time early in his career. So, Van Pelt, with his job potentially on the line, doing what's best for the kid, and along with that, doing what's best for the organization, big picture, you look at it and you say, that's a guy that's a leader. That's a guy that has the team over himself.
Yeah.
So, again, you can approach it both ways. And maybe there's some truth to both of them. But it was a really good question by you. And I think it kind of shows you where they're at right now. And Drake even talked about it this week, and Gerard Mayo talked about it this week. These last 3 games are about development. These last 3 games are about who's going to go out, who's going to be a part of this team moving forward. We know the roster is going to change this offseason. Who is, you have guys like Drake May, Christian Gonzalez, down to the bottom of the roster who are trying to show what they can do for next year. Drake May gets hurt, it blows a lot of things up.
Yeah.
So I thought he didn't need to admit that. He certainly didn't need to admit it. Could have lied. Could have talked around it. If he talks around it, we kind of know what's going on. But I can't help but at least in part commend him for it. Because, again, his job, we don't know. His job might be on the line, and he's still doing what's best for Drake May.
So I like that take. I agree with you that's commendable by Alex Van Pelt that he could go into this, and I think, just to use another rookie quarterback, I think the Commanders did this. I think the Commanders came out and they unleashed Jaden Daniels, right? They installed basically a college offense with a college coordinator and longtime head coach in Cliff Kingsbury, and they ran LSU's offense at the NFL level, and it was gangbusters for the first 6 weeks of the season. And to your point, he gets hurt, and it hasn't been as good, right? Now, the biggest thing that I would just say in reverse to that, though, is my concern is that we don't necessarily know the schematic chops of Alex Van Pelt in terms of designing that kind of offense because we haven't put it on film.
That's where it gets into this weird conversation talking about Alex Van Pelt for the future. Because if you want to defend him and defend his job, you can sit here and say, we know he's good at player development. We know he's good at that part of it. There is more, if he's holding back the quarterback runs, what else is he holding back? Maybe there's other things. Maybe it's not about Drake May's health, but maybe there's some things, and it's we're 3-11. I have this, but I'd rather save it and not put it on tape and come out next year week 1 with it and go gangbusters with it, right?
So here's why.
Or you could say, all right, he's holding back the quarterback runs, saying that to save his job. How much more really is there? Why wouldn't he be doing that?
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
There you go.
Here's where I'm at with that.
Yeah.
Because this is where it comes in with because I think this is an interesting conversation, right? We don't actually know the answer to that question of how much is he holding back versus not.
No, we can only speculate. But I would say that comment opens the door to the possibility that he's holding more back.
Right. So
and sorry to cut you off again, how much is he holding back because we don't have the offensive line to run this, we don't have the wide receivers to run this, etc.
Right. So here's where I would go if I am Gerard Mayo in this whole regime right now. Here was where I would go with Van Pelt. In January, when the season is over, I would say to Alex Van Pelt, okay, show me the actual stuff.
Right.
Give me a presentation of what you actually want to run or actually are capable or could run in terms of quarterback runs in particular, or just movement, right? Moving the pocket, running the quarterback, all the things that we could do I know you're going to hate, to basically Bill's like this offense, right? Like, you really want to be the Bills. Like, that's what you want to do.
Well, cutting down the turnovers, but yeah. And we know Van Pelt is not okay with the turnovers, unlike the nerds who have excused them so they can hype up Josh Allen.
He doesn't turn the ball over as much anymore.
Well, because they made it a point of emphasis.
So,
back-to-back weeks, no turnover-worthy plays. We'll get to the interceptions. But
so, basically, give me a presentation. Give me a PowerPoint on this is what we're actually going to run. And because if I'm Gerard Mayo and Elliott Wolf, I'm saying to Alex Van Pelt, we're going to get the personnel.
Right.
Now, I understand that people hear me say that and are like, well, what confidence do you have?
Well, if they're not going to get the personnel, it doesn't matter what they call.
Right. So let's just operate on the prism that they are actually going to do their jobs and they're going to get the personnel. We're going to get the personnel. We don't want you to worry about that right now. In season, you got to worry about the fact that your left tackle is and right tackle is deficient and all that stuff. But we're going to get you tackles.
Right, that's done.
We're going to get your receivers. Like, just tell us what you have cooking in the lab. And if you like what he says, then great. Then you're good. You're golden.
Yeah.
If you don't like what he says, you have two choices. One is obviously to move on. The other choice is sending him, and this happens all the time in coaching, sending him to some like college program, and you're probably better at picking a program than me, honestly, for like a week or two, just to learn their quarterback run package, right? Like, just teach me your quarterback run package, and have Van Pelt then come back with a different, a new chapter to his playbook.
Well, what would
right?
you think about? And maybe this wouldn't have to be instead of that, but what about having like a run game coordinator, a pass game coordinator, adding that to the offense?
Yeah, or that's another option too, right? Is like hiring somebody from the outside who specializes in like spread offense and that kind of stuff, and is going to install that along with Alex Van Pelt. I forget who I was listening to on the radio the other day. So I'm sorry that I can't credit this person, but they said that this is what Andy Reid did in Kansas City. It might have been Bert. It might have been Albert Breer. That he hired Brad Childress to come in and essentially be his spread game coordinator and take the Chiefs West Coast offense and turn it into a modern West Coast offense, right? And install all these RPOs and motions and things like that into the offense. So that's a path for you too. And then when we come back in here for OTAs and you come back in here for training camp next season and next spring and summer, that's when you start drilling all these things, right? Like, that's when you really start to hone in on running these things so that when you get to September, you've drilled it for 6 weeks and you guys know what you're doing, in terms of these types of things. That would be my big thing with Van Pelt now is, all right, we got through the season. We knew it wasn't going to be pretty. It wasn't pretty. But what's next? Like, what's 2.0 of this offense?
Who's to say they maybe aren't already doing some of that stuff at practice? Van Pelt's talked about, like, there are things on the play sheet he's not calling.
Yeah.
So maybe this has already started.
Yeah.
I'll give you the school, by the way. You're not going to like this, but I'll give you the school that you do that with.
Okay.
It's Army.
I honestly don't hate it.
Bryson Daly is like a big physical. Now, he's not 6'5" like Drake.
Yeah.
But he's 6 foot. He's listed at 220. I think he's bigger than that. I think he's probably closer to 230.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of that. Like, you want the Josh Allen kind of runs where it's not, you look at how Lamar runs, you look at how Jaden Daniels runs, they're running to the outside,
yeah.
They're using more speed, they're trying to get to the perimeter. Josh Allen is, and they'll run him to the outside too, but they're not afraid to put him between the tackles and have him truck somebody. That's kind of how Bryson Daly and Army's offense works.
Yes, so they run a lot of inverted veer in Buffalo. So
veer, that's Army. Veer.
Yeah, so like inverted meaning that the inside run is actually the quarterback and not the running back. The running back is the one that's trying to get the corner, and the quarterback is the one that's trying to get the middle of the defense.
And actually you get the perfect marriage of it because you know who Army's head coach is.
It's Todd Monken's brother, right?
Todd Monken's brother. It's Jeff Monken, yeah. So you get, and him and his brother obviously discuss these things, right? They have kind of a similar philosophy. So you have that Jeff Monken kind of influence, that Ravens influence, but you also, they built it around Brendan Daly is a more physical, bruising runner. He's not going to run around guys. He's going to run over guys. He was, I think, the 5th or 6th leading rusher in college football this year, not among quarterbacks, just overall. That's the school I'd try to emulate.
Yeah, look, I just
He's 7th in the nation. He ran for 1,500 yards in 12 games.
I am willing to be open to the fact that Alex Van Pelt might still be capable of doing this himself without having to change coordinators. And I got to be honest with you, like, you know how much I love Josh McDaniels. I think Josh McDaniels is a great coordinator, not a great head coach, but a great coordinator and a great play caller. But it does concern me to change playbooks on Drake May from year 1 to year 2. He's more talented than Mac Jones. He's a better quarterback than Mac Jones. But we just did this. Like, we just changed coordinators on a rookie quarterback that had a promising rookie season and went to somebody different, and it just went off the rails like 3 years ago, right? Not even.
Yes.
And I'm very wary of that. It's not the reason you keep Alex Van Pelt. Like, it's not the number one reason is continuity. I don't think that's what it is. But I do think it has to play a factor in where you go on offense. And I do believe that if it's Gerard Mayo, that he wants to run a West Coast system. I don't think he wants to necessarily go back to the Earnhardt Perkins offense. Like, I don't think he necessarily wants to do that. Look, I'm open to the fact that it could be Alex Van Pelt that does this and does this pivot. But in order for me to be open to that, I mean, I'm not going to. I'm not gonna be in on the meeting. Shocker. Right. But you have to have a presentation, right? You have to have a sit down in a meeting.
I wouldn't even wait till the end of the year. I think that would start probably now, and maybe you start doing some of that stuff at practice to kind of see what it looks like. So to your point about that, if they were to have that meeting, it's not just, okay, we'll get you the player. What are your plans? It's, what are your plans so we know which players to get that fit into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they have some of the guys already that would fit into it. Maybe not so much on the line because they have a lot of work to do there. But I actually really feel like Pop Douglas is like a useful player in that sort of thing. I watch how the Bills use Khalil Shakir, and Khalil Shakir's a little thicker, like he's a little bigger than Pop Douglas. But like in general, they run a lot of orbit, right, with the motion coming behind the quarterback and things like that.
Greg Dortch last week.
Yeah.
Cardinals.
Yeah. Like they use a lot of that orbit motion or satellite motion where he goes behind the quarterback. And what I really like about what the Bills will do is they'll use the motion man to run a play action fake to the motion, right? So they're gonna fake the sweep, the jet sweep or whatever, and then that allows that frees up the running back to like get into the pattern instantly. So they ran like an orbit motion behind Josh Allen against Detroit, and then they ran the back on a wheel right from the place that the motion was coming from, right? Yeah. So that space just opens up, and then they get man-to-man coverage, and it's just a running back on a linebacker with like 25 yards of space to work with, and it was a bomb. So you look at these types of things that Buffalo does, that's just what the Patriots offense is missing, and people that are not nerds like me that are studying Bills tape this week, like when you watch the game on Sunday, you'll see it. Like you'll see when they get down on the goal line that they're running bash and they're running counter and they're running trap and they're running all these things with Allen that allow him to just walk into the end zone sometimes untouched for touchdowns. Like last week, the Red Seas just parted and he just waltzed in for a touchdown from like 3 or 4 yards out. The Patriots need to get that stuff in the playbook next year. Like it needs to be in the playbook next year. That's how you get competitive. I get it now, but that's how you get competitive on that side of the ball. So that's your coaching autopsy. Did you do 3 up, 3 down?
I did.
Are you prepared?
I am.
All right.
Did we agree that we're retiring Christian Gonzalez?
Nope.
And just saying he's good? Okay.
No. So I have 2 up and 4 down because of that kind of game. That's what you get from me. So I'll just start because we both just said it.
Yeah.
I had Christian Gonzalez as the number 1 up.
I think he's just he just counts it like we did with Barmore last year.
He's number 1 up. I still want to talk about it because there's not a whole lot of positives to talk about right now. This to me was one of his best games as a pro. Now Marvin Harrison Jr. is maybe not the instant franchise number 1 receiver that we thought he was going to be.
I wouldn't say we there.
Oh,
because some people it said he was very good, but he was not going to instantly step in and fix everything.
You did say that
the way many thought he would.
You did say that. Now I also had him and Malik Neighbors really close by the end of the process. So
Harrison's been good. I think he's just limited in that offense.
So Christian Gonzalez against Marvin Harrison Jr. I didn't write that routes. I think it was 22 routes across from him in coverage. 5 targets, 1 catch, 23 yards.
And it was a pick play.
It was a pick play. Didn't play it great. to be fair.
I'm surprised more teams haven't done that to Gonzalez this year, and I think you're going to start to see it more now.
So he's usually pretty good at navigating it. On this one, I think he was inside the slot. I think that sort of took him by surprise that they ran it that way. So he had PFF had him with 2 PBUs technically.
Yeah,
I know the box score after the game, I want to say had 3. One of them but PFF tracks what they call forced incompletions, which isn't necessarily that they get a hand in there to deflect the pass, but it's more just like such tight coverage that like there's no way the pass was going to be completed, sort of thing. So they had 4 of those for him on 5 targets. So all the other targets that he had, he had him in jail. I mean, he was just strapped in on Marvin Harrison Jr. This is one of those tapes that when you're Christian Gonzalez, who I talked to this week, and I have a post about it tomorrow. If you want to make the case that Christian Gonzalez is like an all-pro, a Pro Bowl caliber player this year, this is the film that you show.
Oh yeah,
yeah. This was elite cornerback play by him on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to that. Just playing an incredibly high level right now. I think the team's records probably hurting him in terms of some of that league recognition stuff, Pro Bowl, All-Pro, but can you name 5 better corners in the NFL right now?
No. I mean, Surtain's having a great year.
Yeah.
Stingley's having a great year. I would say that you're third, right? Like you have an argument that Christian Gonzalez has been at worst the third best corner.
Also, by the way,
football.
this show had Stingley over Sauce that year.
It did. It did very proudly.
I was like annoyed by that one.
It really goes to show, and this is the last thing I promise because we have to move, but we've talked about this before, and I know Stephon Gilmore, once he got into like a little bit cocky defensive player of the year mode, which I loved. I loved that version of Stephon Gilmore. He came out and said it. Like, there's zone corners and there's man corners. Like, some of us, like Christian Gonzalez, like Stephon Gilmore, like Derek Stingley, like, we travel, right? Like, we're going to go with you all over the field, whether you're in the slot, whether you're left, to the left of the quarterback, to the right of the quarterback. Like, we're going with you everywhere. Then there's corners like Sauce Gardner that are just taking a deep third of the field and cover 3 all game long. And when you have a great pass rush, you all of a sudden you look great, right? Like you look fantastic. Oh wow, easier job. It's an easier job.
I've said this to you off the air. I don't know that I've brought this take on the air before. That Seattle 3 defense, is to corners what the Shanahan offense is to quarterbacks.
Yeah,
it takes a lot off their plate. It makes it very paint by number for them. It puts the emphasis on players at other positions.
Yeah, good one. Who's your number 2 up?
My number 2 up, I had 4 because I didn't know if I didn't remember if we were tied Christian Gonzalez or not.
Yeah.
Drake May.
Yeah.
I thought for what this game was, and they were obviously very conservative, was that because the offensive line was struggling and they wanted to protect him? Was it just general conservativeness? It was probably some of both. For what this game was, he handled himself well. A couple bad snaps, avoided disaster there. I know it's in garbage time. The throw to Kendrick Bourne's a really good throw. Your arm doesn't know how much time's on the clock or what the scoreboard is mechanically. Physically, it's an impressive throw. Same with the play to Pop Douglas. And he turned the ball over, but it hit the receiver in both hands.
Yeah.
He didn't put the ball in harm's way for a second straight game. He did have a spray, which we hadn't seen from him in a few weeks.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a dangerous throw. He missed it. It wasn't near anybody. You hope the sprays don't add up. It's just, all right, it came back, move on from it. But I thought for what this game was a game where Drake May probably should have had a much worse game than he did, just given everything surrounding him. And yet he was solid.
Yeah, so the reason why I didn't have him as an up isn't because I didn't consider all the same things. They just asked so little of him in this game. And this is another thing about, I didn't bring this up with the whole rant about the offense, but this is my initial take after the game, so I didn't want to repeat myself too much. They just came out of this game. This was Patricia-esque. Like, in terms of, like, screen, draw, right? Like, they just didn't put anything on his plate. And that, to me, was really frustrating because, for one, and the boss says this all the time, Fred, says, don't coddle him, right? Like, you did that with Mac Jones, and it worked for 1 year. And then the more that was put on Mac Jones's shoulders, the worse that it got. Like, you have to see what you're capable of at this level.
Yeah, I don't know if it was coddling so much as protecting, especially in the wake of Van Pelt's comments today.
Yeah.
You look at the way that offensive line played early.
Right.
I wonder if they saw that and said, Yeah, we can't. 5-step drops, no, those are off the play sheet. Rollouts, no, those are off the play sheet. Like, I wonder if they just looked at it and said, we got to make sure he makes it through this game. The offense, like, sometimes starting pitcher in baseball gets up there in the first inning, hangs a curveball, and maybe it's a good pitch, but hangs his curveball, and catcher looks at it and says, doesn't have the curveball today. We're throwing more fastballs. We're throwing more changeups. I wonder if they just went out there, saw it. Offensive line doesn't have it today. We can't put the kid in danger here.
I hear that, but when you go into halftime and his average air yards per target is negative 0.8, like you're below 0.
Yeah.
And everything is near the line of scrimmage, they really didn't even remotely touch on opening up this offense until midway through the third
I'm not necessarily defending it. Like, if the goal was to protect him, I get it, but they overdid it. But I'm just saying, I wonder if that's what happened. I wonder if it was so much protecting Drake May, the rookie, putting too much on his plate just versus physically protecting him with the blocking.
Yeah, I mean, look, he graded out well again, but a lot of his plus plays came late in this game. You know, some people would say in garbage time of this game. The interception, I put it on Booty, but I also think he was late to the in cut a little bit because of the pressure. You know, that's one of those that it's probably more on Ben Brown getting beat and Booty dropping the pass than it is on Drake. But I've seen him throw that ball sooner and better and like more on time, I guess is the better way to put it, in the past. You know, like the ones to Kendrick Bourne against the Colts were just perfectly timed, perfectly fit.
Your overlords at PFF said it wasn't a turnover-worthy play. So.
It's not a turnover-worthy play, just like in my mind, the Hunter Henry one on the goal line wasn't a turnover-worthy play. But could it have been?
Could have been a better throw. Sure.
Could have been better.
Yeah.
Right?
But it shouldn't. That throw shouldn't lead to a turnover.
No. That's why it's not a turnover-worthy play. Now, it goes back to the quarterback run thing for me as well. Like they did not ask him to do a whole lot in this game.
Yeah.
And in my mind, when I'm watching it, when I was writing about it right after the game, I'm like, he's not Bailey Zappi. Like, right? Like, you know, he's very talented. Like, I don't understand why we're bottling him up here. And then all of a sudden, I get it. Arizona starts playing some softer coverages. It's garbage time, whatever you want to call it. But like to your point, the go ball to Kendrick Bourne in the fourth quarter, that's man to man, right? Like they're not backing off there. They're playing press man across the board, and he just throws a dime to Kendrick Bourne. Like if you do that in the first quarter instead of the fourth quarter, and that play doesn't take forever. That's not like he doesn't need 4 seconds to like get that throw off. But if you do that early in the game, then some of the short game stuff that they were trying to do, now it almost makes the defense like respect it a little bit more.
It opens it up a little more.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, you know, now maybe some of those swings and the screens and the flats and things like that, like maybe that stuff like works out. You know, the little sticks that they like to run to the tight ends that the Cardinals were all over. Well, if you run a little stick nod, right, where he acts like he's going to sit and then he goes up the field, up the seam, and he hits him early on in the game, well, now maybe they don't sit all over those throws underneath anymore. Those are the types of things that I just feel like they could have done better. Anyways, I digress. My second up in this game was
Real quick, you want some interesting breaking news here?
Sure.
The Jets have interviewed Senior Bowl Executive Director Jim Nagy for their GM job.
Oh, interesting.
What do you think of that?
I like Jim Nagy. I really have enjoyed all my conversations that I've had with him. I think he's a bright football mind. I think it would behoove him to not have to gas up every single player that goes to Mobile, right? You know, I think that would help. He's very good at putting together teams and understanding the landscape of college. So from that aspect, if you're just looking to be truly like a draft and develop team, it's a good person to interview.
Yeah. Is he going to use Madden ratings? So that's the question.
No. He is not.
You saw that, right?
I did. I'm choosing to believe that story wasn't real.
Next time people say, who cares about the Madden ratings?
Woody Johnson is a really great.
Apparently.
Really great.
Apparently he cares.
Number 2 up.
Yep.
Antonio Gibson.
Okay.
I thought Antonio Gibson.
Both running backs.
Yeah, I thought Antonio Gibson was fantastic in this game. Continues to just pound the table for more and more opportunities. He had 11 forced missed tackles in this game.
And he had more yards after contact than he had total yards.
Yeah, so he had 44 after contact as a runner, and then he had 33 yards after the catch in the passing game. So he had 77 yards that he basically...
He did it on his own.
Did on his own.
Yeah. No, he's good. Stevenson, too. So the Patriots backs finished with 116 yards. Or sorry, no, that's with Drake May. I'm not going to do the math in my head. They had how many did Drake May? Drake May had none after contact. So the Patriots running backs finished with 102 yards in this game. 98 of those yards were after contact.
Yeah.
This, it was like early in the season against the Bengals where the running game worked. It wasn't because of the offensive line. It was those guys creating, and good for them. And I think Ramondre Stevenson, after a rough stretch there in the middle of the year, continues to kind of get back into form here. Gibson should have a bigger role, and you see as Gibson gets a bigger role, Ramondre Stevenson looks a little bit fresher. I wonder if those two things are related.
They also had the bye, which I think did Ramondre
They also had the bye, but just as a whole for the last few weeks. So I thought both running backs ran hard, ran well. That was encouraging to see, especially like in theory. Obviously, they're out of it now, but like these are probably going to be their top two backs again next year, just based on contracts.
Yeah. That
kind of running, they're in Arizona, they're indoors. You get up here in the cold late in the year, you start running like that, you're going to create some really big plays.
Yeah, so the one play at the end of the game by Gibson where he catches a ball that's a little behind him with one hand, then breaks like 3 tackles and goes for a pretty big gain.
And that's also with that. Those numbers, by the way, are without the one that was brought back on the Layden Robinson hold.
Yeah, I mean that was a big time play on that catch at the end of the game by Antonio Gibson.
Yep.
All right, anybody else?
Yeah, I have one more. Christian Ellis. I know it was a rough game for the defense as a whole, but he comes up. He tackles Kyler Murray in space on a third down. That's a really good tackle.
Really
Had
good
another
play.
good tackle early on the big James Conner run where Jabril Peppers gets beat. You watch Christian Ellis on that. He comes almost all the way across the field to chase him down and make that tackle. Busted his ass. If not, that's a touchdown.
Yeah.
And I hate to give an up on a play that was a 56-yard run, and it was kind of just that kind of game. But where this team is at record-wise this time of year, who's still trying? Who's still giving it their all? Christian Ellis played with great motor in this game. He made a couple plays when nobody else on defense really did. You talk about what's the plan down the road, how many of these guys are still going to be here. I don't think Christian Ellis is your starting linebacker. I think you need to find somebody with a more athletic skill set to play next to Juwan Bentley. As a depth guy who's also going to play on special teams and be kind of a spark plug, I'd like to see Christian Ellis on the team next year. I think he continues to prove that he belongs and should have a role. I don't know what that role is. It's probably not as big as it is this year, but I don't think it's nothing either.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point. I actually think, came away from this with the same thing with Christian Ellis. Like, if you can get him into a specialized role, third down, passing down situation type of role.
Maybe like a spy.
Yeah, like I think he could be an effective player for you down the road. He's not a first and second down linebacker in this defense. We just talked about the whole Bentley, sledgehammer, that whole thing. That's not his game. But yeah, absolutely. I think that he could play in this defense in the future. All right, to the downs.
Yep.
I have 4.
I have 3.
It could have been probably 8 or 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Number 1, Vidarian Lowe. Vidarian Lowe, number 1 by far.
I had him too.
Sack, 3 hurries, 4 run stuffs he was responsible for in this game, including the 3rd and 1. Was it 3rd and 1 or 4th and 1? Whichever one it was one of those was his fault.
Yeah.
I forget which one. I just come back to with Vidarian Lowe. He's going to miss blocks. That he's going to struggle at times because he's just limited, talent-wise. It really, really gets off the rails for him when he's not locked in mentally. Like, if he's not doing everything correctly all the time, consistently, then he's a real problem.
He doesn't really just have an okay game.
No.
Like, he either, Vidarian Lowe played well today, kind of played above it, or it was bad. You don't just see him sort of play all right.
Yeah, so, like, the sack that he gave up, he just doesn't get out of his stance and gets blown by.
I had him with 3 blow-bys. 2 of them are on back-to-back plays, and another one later in the game.
Yeah, and then the 4 run stuffs was just as big of a problem in this game, I thought, than the pressures, too. So, look, it is what it is, and you hope that next year, no disrespect to Vidarian Lowe, but you hope next year you have a better left tackle that's starting these games. But he played, so he's on the list.
This is why no half measures at that position.
Yeah.
This is why I say I had him as well. I'll just go to my second, also on the offensive line, Ben Brown.
Yeah.
I gave the take last week that I would leave Ben Brown in for the sake of continuity with Drake May. You gave the same take. Don't grin like that. Apparently, a bunch of people thought that was me saying Ben Brown was an all-pro and should never be removed from the lineup. That was not the case. And look, if you can't get the ball back to the quarterback, everything else beyond there doesn't really matter. And he didn't have a great game blocking either, but I mainly look at the 2 bad snaps. Was good for a couple months, but you got to get the ball back to the quarterback. Nothing else matters if you can't do that.
Yeah, the dribbles back to the quarterback were tough. I mean, that he was my number 2 down too. Those 2 snaps were tough, and they came at tough spots too. Like just opening drive, you're trying to get going, and then another one of them,
it was a third down, right?
Yeah, put him in a bad third down spot. So like you just 2 big spots for them too early on in the game, and then he also allowed 3 hurries in this game, and was probably his worst game from a blocking standpoint in pass protection too. He had some really uncharacteristically ugly reps in pass pro in this game, including on the interception where he just gets completely whipped at the line of scrimmage, and that caused the whole play to kind of be late, and Drake made a throw a little bit off his back foot and like all this kind of stuff. So it was a chain reaction from the get-go that the center gets beat on the pressure, and then all the other things happen in consequence because of that. If that play to Booty hits on time when he comes out of his break, it's a nice completion. It's there. But all of these types of things contribute. So Ben Brown, number 2 down. I mean, look, it opens the door for Cole Strange.
Absolutely.
I still feel like it's a little unfair to Cole Strange to put him in an NFL game at center without any training camp, preseason, any sort of real work in there at a more live setting. Like, you're not really practicing live this late in the season. So I still kind of err on the side that might be a next season project with Cole Strange. But I definitely think that you have to at least, I would at least have him active for the game on Sunday. Who's next?
My third one was Alex Van Pelt. We already covered that. But they went in a shell. I get that there were limitations, but unable to pick up, like when you can't get 1 yard on 2 plays and you essentially run the same play back to back, it's not good.
Yeah, not good. Not good. All right, so my last 2 are on defense. Kyle Duggar.
I probably should have somebody from defense. Yeah, I'll say the safeties, Duggar and Peppers.
Yeah,
did not play
so well. I didn't think Peppers played well either, but Kyle Duggar again, just not good enough. Just lost in zone coverage a couple times over the middle of the field. There was a third down where they dropped out of a pressure into zone, and Trey McBride just crossed in front of his face for an uncontested third down conversion. It was 3rd and 6, and Duggar let Trey McBride go untouched for the first 7 yards of his route. And so it was just too easy. The 2 missed tackles, in the open field were really, really rough. Obviously, he's like the last line of defense on both plays, the Dortch screen and then the James Conner run. And he's got a chance to at least limit the damage. And, talking over the years with Devin McCourty, I remember that was always the biggest thing as being the last line of defense. It's already a big gain, right? Like if it's getting to you, if the ball's getting to you, it's already a big gain. But at least you can make it a 20-yard gain instead of a 53-yard gain, right? Like, and that really helps out your defense. So Kyle Duggar, again, I would say this about Kyle Duggar. I almost didn't have him on here because something is going on with Kyle Duggar.
It's the ankle,
Ankle, mental. I don't know what it is, but they have to get him right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And maybe the offseason does that. It's a reset and you get away from football for a little bit. But Kyle Duggar has not been good enough for weeks now. It's just every single week.
Yeah.
Do you have anybody else?
No, that's it.
So my last one on defense was Jelani Tavai, who, again, do I necessarily blame him for being in these positions? No, it's probably more of a roster issue or a talent issue or a coaching issue. But he's got 2 plays to make on third down where he makes contact with the runner, with the receiver short of the line to gain, and he whiffs on both of them, right? He had an opportunity early on in this game to stop James Conner on third down, and Conner broke the tackle and got the first down. They just need him to be able to make those plays. It's 1 or 2 plays. It's not a big deal in terms of volume in this game for Jelani Tavai, but I just thought those were 2 back-breaking third downs that cost the defense. So had to have some defensive guys on there. Let's open it up, and I know people have been waiting, so we appreciate it. And we got, as you can expect, Alex, the entire email inbox is draft and off-season topics, so we'll get into that. And first, Bridgestone, the official tire of the New England Patriots, is proud to partner with Sullivan Tire. New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. All right, let's get to the phones. Patty is in Agawam. What's up, Patty?
What's up, guys?
Hey.
How you doing?
Pretty good. Hey, listen, I don't know if you're gonna have a show next week, but if you don't, I just wanted to say happy holidays, happy Hanukkah to you gentlemen.
Thank you.
And I wanted to throw up a couple just one hypothetical, really. Well, two. First off, Will Campbell, if his arms measure out, I want him. I don't care where they take him. Take him at 3. I don't give a flying F.
Yeah.
The other thing is, if the other idea that I had, and Alex, I know this kind of drives you crazy, but hear me out. Let's say that they do sign T. Higgins, or they're able to trade for DK Metcalf. We get that big stud X receiver. Would you be opposed to maybe moving down the board a little bit, taking Luther Burden, who I know both of you guys love, and taking a guy like Connerly or moving up to take Connerly, possibly at the end of the first or second? I think, like Paul has said, I don't know if either of you guys have said this, but I think we need 2 wide receivers, and I think we need 2 studs, and I think if we get that big X, that outside X, and Evan, I said this on PU today, I'm not really a believer in DeMario. I think we need something better in that slot, and I would love to, we kind of need an overhaul at those first 2 wide receiver positions, and I want to get your guys' thoughts on that. I'll take it off air.
Thanks, Patty.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. So I guess I agree to an extent with what he's saying about Pop Douglas. Pop Douglas cannot be your number 1 receiver. Right. He probably can't be necessarily even your number 2 receiver on a good team, but he is a very useful slot and gadget player.
If you have T. Higgins and Luther Burden getting more attention and coverage, suddenly Pop Douglas is going to look like a much better player.
Yeah, I don't think that – I believe that there's a role for Pop Douglas as a top 3 receiver in an offense if you build the room correctly, right? So, I love Luther Burden. I see where he's coming from, that Higgins and Burden together coming here. That pairing makes a lot of sense. I'm for it. I still am wary of the fact that you're not drafting a tackle probably until the 30s, maybe the 20s, like that if you trade back in. I think we're both a little bit concerned about doing that. But
if you get the right guy, I know Patty's talking about it, that take annoys me. It's more the Josh Simmons thing. Nothing against him personally, but not the guy coming off a significant knee injury. That's specifically what bothers me. If they really like Ariante Ursary, or they really like Josh Connerly, who are probably going to go at the highest in the mid-20s, right? And you swing that, I could be sold on that. Okay, that makes some sense. You got to really believe that either of those guys can be a day 1 starter, but you could swing me on that. It's what specifically bugs me is either Josh Simmons, or when you start talking about Cameron Williams or Emory Jones, because those guys are right tackles. And I know that there's been some success moving guys from side to side this year, but it's another if that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Can you just draft a player that's a good player at that position, that is ready to play that position? Not that has to rehab, not that has to learn a new position, just a guy that is a left tackle that you believe can be a good left tackle, period, full stop. No position changes, no injuries, no none of that. That's the holdup. If you want to sell me on the best path is T. Higgins or DK Metcalf, the outside X, and then we're going to move down to get Burden and use part of what we got moving down to move back up to get Ursary or Connerly, I don't know that it's what I would do.
Yeah.
But I'd give him a good grade for that. I would say that that's a pretty solid haul for it's a pretty. I would say the positions are addressed.
Yeah. I love the idea in theory, and I agree that I would agree that it would be addressed, right? I feel like they would have attacked it if that's what they have done. I do think it's a little bit fantasy football, and I don't mean to pick on Patty, but it's just that's a really difficult atom to split, right?
You've got to really nail that.
You got to really work the board.
I'll say this too, and I know nobody wants to hear this. Hate to be the bearer of bad news. I won't get my hopes up about T. Higgins if I'm a Patriots fan. Did you see what he did in terms of his agent?
Yeah, I did.
He hired Jamar Chase's agent.
I understand.
That's a pretty clear message.
But I'm still I'm still not totally sold that he doesn't hit free agency. I know you had, Taylor Kyles and I have gone back and forth off the air about this a lot. I just, for him to not hit free agency now after everything that's happened in Cincinnati, he's going to make so much money on the open market.
Yeah, but
they would really have to blow him out of the water because, like, at this point, he's months away from being a free agent. It'd be different if he was still under team control for like another year or something like that. But at this point, like, you've made it this far, so unless they come at you with like $30+ million a year, and then I still think he goes to market.
Joe Burrow says what he says after that game.
Well, they're clear that Burrow and a little bit Chase too are clearly lobbying to keep him. Like that.
Well,
that's obvious.
I think that the Bengals would be. I wouldn't piss those guys off from the Bengals. I'd be.
But if you're the
Bengals,
Bengals,
guys.
If you're the Bengals and you obviously extend Jamar Chase and get that done, like, aren't you one of those teams if you're Cincinnati where like you could probably draft a receiver that has a similar skill set and you're good enough offensively with those two guys that, like, it's not the Patriots that are talent poor,
their needs are on defense.
That's
true.
true.
If you get that, the offense is set. Like the offensive line, they just used a first-round pick on a tackle, right? It's okay. We're going to pay T. Higgins and pay Jamar Chase. And maybe you don't have a lot of money left, but all the money you have left and all of your draft resources now are defense, right? You're going to get maybe not Abdul Carter. They're not going to pick that high, but you get maybe like a James Pierce, right? Or a Jihad Campbell in the first round. You get that edge rusher. You get one, or they probably go corner first because it's not a good corner draft. And then you get one of those day 2 edge guys, one of the Ohio State guys. You keep them in state, right? You can address, it's a good linebacker draft. Like this offseason, you can attack defense without spending a lot of, for any team, you can attack defense without spending a lot of money. So that's what they need to attack. They can pay T. Higgins and still do what they need to do this offseason.
Yeah, it's a good point. I just think it's twofold with the Bengals.
Should we call Trags and ask him?
Yeah, right.
Tell Trags to call in and give us the Bengals offseason plan?
It's twofold to me with T. Higgins still, though. One is you have to at least account for the Bengals of it all.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's a smaller market team. And now they're about to give out, like $1 billion in contracts to like 3 guys, essentially. It's going to be less than that, but like I'm exaggerating a little bit. So you have to think about, okay, we're the Cincinnati Bengals, and we're like about to give out $500 million in contracts to 3 guys, right? And that matters. Like, it
does matter.
They're going to own the franchise,
right? How many guys are they pay? They don't have a ton of big contracts coming after that. It's going to be a few years. You look at their drafts the last few years, there's some decent players, but okay, even if Amarius Mims, who was the tackle they drafted last year, if he pans out, you're not giving that contract for another 5 years if you take the first-year option. By then, you're not signing Chase and Higgins to 5-year deals, right? Those guys are off the books.
I mean, Chase is going to get...
Chase might, but not both of them.
Chase is going to get $35 million a year.
Right, but I'm saying they don't really have... Burrow's paid. It's those 2 guys. A lot of the rest of their roster is either transactional or just really young and not due for a new contract for the next few years.
All I'm saying is I just know that team is not... It's not the Dallas Cowboys.
The Cowboys are hesitant to pay, too.
They're not printing money, is my point, over there in Cincinnati.
Who isn't hesitant? You don't really have a Los Angeles Dodgers in the...
The other thing I would say about this with
right
the Bengals... I do think that there's an argument, and maybe I would be dead wrong and it would set them back, and we could, I would allow for that to be right. But I do think that there's an argument that they have the infrastructure to just keep on doing what they always do in Cincinnati, which is just draft and develop, right? And so, is there... I don't know if there's...
Well, now you're going to agitate Joe Burrow.
I guess, but like if you draft Joe Burrow, if you pay Jamar Chase... and you draft Joe Burrow like a day 2 wide receiver that's in the similar mold as T.
I thought
Higgins.
you were talking about letting them both go.
No, absolutely not. If you're signing Jamar Chase and you're drafting a day 2 receiver that you feel like, Jamar Chase didn't really need development, so I'm not going to give them too much credit for that one. But like they seem like a team that Yoshivas, T. Higgins, like these guys are making plays.
Yeah, you're kind of pitching A.J. Brown, Traylon Burks right now.
A little bit.
Not really, because you have Chase. They didn't have another guy, but you're kind of taking the mystery box.
Okay, but you're pitching that with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. You're not pitching that with Ryan Tannehill, right? Like
fair enough.
It's a different infrastructure. And I just think that good teams tend to spread the money around, right? You know, and like tend to take like more of like the Kansas City approach where we have the quarterback that's going to make everybody better. So that's just my argument that the Bengals might not blow T. Higgins out of the water with the contract offer that makes it so he doesn't go to market.
Well, so I just think the messaging out of there right now is pretty strong.
I agree, but I'm not closing the door.
All right.
Reggie is in Peabody. What's up, Reggie?
Hey guys,
Hey.
I'm curious. I understand all the conversation about the roster talent and everything like that. I'm just thinking back on 2020 when, you know, with the Cam Newton year when we won 7 games, which might end up being the amount of games we won over the last 2 years. I'm curious how you see from each position group how this roster today compares to the 2020. I remember. Excuse me, that was the year we had N'Keal Harry, Damiere Byrd, a young Jacoby Myers. I'd say our wide receivers are better now than they were then. Our offensive line, I mean, we had Joe Tooney that year, Justin Herron, Isaiah Wynn, which was an issue at left tackle. Dalton Kincaid and Devin Asiasi, I'd say our tight ends are much better now. I'm curious to see, like, position group by position group, how you feel this roster today compares to how it did in 2020. Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Reggie. Dalton Keene, I think, is what he meant there. It's tough because they had all the opt-outs in 2020.
2020 is one of Belichick's finest works, just getting that team to 7 wins. I also think it's tough to use that year as a comparison for anything because there were so many added variables. And I think just Belichick's experience and his ability to create a routine and a pattern, like in a year where so much was weird, the militaristic approach played so well.
Yeah.
Not that I think it ever played poorly, but 2020 is kind of its own thing. Because of all the external variables.
I hear the
question
question about the roster talent, but I'm with you
we
in
can
terms
do
of
the exercise.
situation.
Brian Hoyer, Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham versus Drake May, Jacoby Brissett, Joe Milton.
Well, it's definitely, Drake is definitely the best quarterback out of that group from where Cam was at that point of his career.
Yeah.
But I just think the biggest thing to me when I look at that team is that offensively, that team had an identity, right? Like that team could run the ball.
That was a smash mouth team.
Yeah, they could run the football. And they used the quarterback, and they could really run the ball. And to McDaniels' credit, he designed an offense around Cam Newton on the fly, which I thought was really impressive. And they had a really, I know, he brings up Isaiah Wynn and stuff like that, but that line, especially on the interior, was Tooney, Andrews, Mason. Like, that was a really, really solid offensive line in the middle of that group, and they were able to run the football. Basically all season long, even when Cam started to decay as a thrower, they were still able to run the ball. So as much as I would say that you could probably say that the talent might be a little bit better in some spots this year than it was in 2020, that 2020 team was playing together in a lot of ways, and they had identities on both sides of the football that this team doesn't have. So I don't know. I probably would say the 2020 team was better because they were better. Like, they won more games, right? Like, they were more competitive. Even if, like, we could sit here and say Hunter Henry's a better tight end than Devin Asiasi and was it Ben Watson, right? The corpse of Ben Watson.
No, it was the rookies. It was
wasn't Ben Watson on that team?
No, he didn't come back until I think the next year.
I thought he came back in 2020.
He came back. No, because I remember talking to him in the locker room. We weren't in the locker room that year. He might not have been back. No, he was back the year before because he came back with Brady.
So did he come back the year before?
He came back in 19,
Yeah, when Gronk retired late, they brought him back. Okay, I got my years mixed up. But yeah, I don't know how you could sit here and say that the 2020 team was worse when they won 4 more games than this team is going to. Brad is in Ohio. What's up, Brad?
Hey, hi, guys. How you doing?
Good.
Merry Christmas. Getting ready to be it. So,
you as well.
Thank you. Just wanted to make a couple observations and suggestions and see you guys' take on these. So we know that we haven't been able to run the ball, and I know I've asked you this before, Evan. I think both of you. We haven't been able to run the ball continually throughout this whole year. We can't even get a yard when we need to. And how were we last year in regards to where we're ranked now in regards to that same type of running when City Sal actually played on the team and actually was on the line, not lined up as a fullback, which leads me to say we should draft Ben Bredesen of Michigan if that's what we need, a player like that. But can you correlate that for me, Evan, and two of you kind of give me where we're at now compared to where we was when City Sal I knew could block and get a yard at the goal line. He flattened Cameron Hayward, and now he can't block at all. I'm confused. So, and then I know Makari Page from Free Safety of Michigan, Colston Loveland, a tight end, the tight end from Penn State, and the tight end from Bowling Green are players that I think are really going to be a better fit or a better player than the wide receivers that are available in the draft. And they're like second-round picks, I think. So what do you think about that, too, in regards to a tight end, a young tight end to fit in with Drake for the future? So thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks for the call. So to the first point about the fullback and like all that kind of stuff, I didn't really get what he was saying about City. So I guess just
that they were able to run the ball with City So in the lineup last year, I think, and now he's not in the lineup. So would putting him in help them run the ball?
Got it. So
I think
I would say that they have struggled to run the ball for 3 years now, like going back to 2022 with Matt Patricia. Their last really good run year in my mind was 21 with McDaniels. Now there's an argument to be made there about fullbacks, right? Like McDaniels used a fullback, as we all know, and they don't use a fullback now. They really pivoted away from the fullback in Patricia's year in 22. But McDaniels is also just a really good run game coordinator. Always has been. Was really good in Vegas. Like that was the one thing with Josh Jacobs that they were actually good at on offense in Vegas was running the football. Josh Jacobs won the rushing title, right? McDaniels' first season as the coach there. So I give a lot of that credit to McDaniels. I think he's a really good schemer in the run game and does a nice job there.
Yeah, 2022 rushing leader.
The City So thing is interesting. I would say the City So thing is interesting because it doesn't feel like this regime identifies with City So as their draft pick. Nope. And Scott Peters wasn't here. Alex Van Pelt wasn't here. It definitely feels like they are trying to make their guy work in Layden Robinson instead. And for better or worse, right? Like I don't have the answer to that question. I think they're both similar players. Frankly, I think that they're both physical downhill blockers. I think they both struggle in pass protection, and I think they're both decent at moving the line of scrimmage in the run game. So the fact that they like Layden Robinson a little bit more than City So, I think it's kind of a coin toss. Like I think it's kind of, pick your flavor.
By the way, Trag's ears must have been burning. He just tweeted this out just now, this quote from Jamar Chase. I just talking about Rocky Arsenault, the agent.
Yeah.
I just told him we're stuck together for life now. We're locked in for life now. There's a possible chance both of us sign with the Bengals long term.
Possible.
Well, I asked Trags. Trags thinks it's happening.
Okay. Well, Trags would know better than me. If I'm T. Higgins, I'm going to market. That's all I'm saying.
Well, both can be true.
Okay.
Both can be true.
The second point. What was the second point? No, I forgot.
He just listed a bunch of guys in the draft.
Oh yeah, the whole tight end thing. We've talked a little bit about the tight end thing. Like I think it could have. I think Drake likes throwing to tight ends. I think that's clear.
You want to get the pipeline ready. You want the next guy. Hunter Henry's going to have 2 years left on his deal. It's really one concrete year. He's older now. You want to, and tight ends generally take longer to develop than the average position. I'm all for getting the next guy in the building and getting going. And he replaces Austin Hooper as your second tight end next year, and then a year or two he takes over. Loveland and Warren are going to be first-round picks.
Yeah.
I would not invest that heavily in that position, especially with how deep this draft is at tight end. You're going to get a ton of good project players. So we mentioned Harold Fannin from Bowling Green.
Yeah.
He's going to be an interesting one because he's the first consensus, or he's the first All-American in the history of Bowling Green. But he's coming from the MAC. You got to evaluate that thing. I like Mason Taylor from LSU. I like Gunnar Helm from Texas. Bunch of day 3 guys. Mitchell Evans is my player to watch for Notre Dame in the college football playoff.
Yeah.
He's old school. You want like an old school tight end who is big, blocks his ass off, wins with physicality at the short and intermediate. That's Mitchell Evans. We'll see, Oscar Delp, Terrence Ferguson. There's a bunch of tight ends in this draft. Like they'll find somebody. Colson Loveland's a good player. Tyler Warren's a good player. I don't think they need to use a first-round pick on a tight end right now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I don't necessarily see as like a pressing enough need to use a first-round pick. Like if they were getting a guy that they thought was going to truly be like the number one weapon in their offense, like a Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski like level tight end, then that would be a different story. I don't maybe Warren. Like I think Jacob Warren's really talented. Tyler. Why did I think Jacob?
Because he was a tight end here for like a minute.
Jacob Warren?
Yeah, he was out of Tennessee. He was the Tennessee guy that came with Drake May.
See, I knew.
He was here for the summer.
I had a reason to
No
think
relation.
That. Tyler Warren. I could see maybe him being like in that upper echelon. I guess what I'm getting at is like if there was a Brock Bowers in this draft, then I maybe would think a little bit differently because now you're thinking, okay, we're going to build the offense around this guy.
I don't know that Tyler Warren's that guy.
I don't think so either.
And even if he is like, so I guess the counter would be, we talked about it earlier, right? Do you trade down and then trade up and go receiver tackle?
Yeah.
If enough teams are scared off by Will Campbell, but you believe he's a tackle, do you trade down slightly, move back up and take Tyler Warren instead of maybe Emeka Egbuka as a receiver, first-round pass catcher?
Yeah, it's possible. I could hear it. And
that would probably be how that would have to happen.
Like I said, Drake definitely likes throwing a tight end.
Yeah, no, I want them to draft a tight end with upside. I want them to get a guy in the building. But when you look at some of these guys, like, again, I like Gunnar Helm.
Yeah.
He has tight end one upside. He's just not nearly as polished as Tyler Warren is. And they can afford to have a guy who's not going to be ready year one because ideally he's going to be playing behind Hunter Henry to start.
So let me ask you this because, I like this guy, and so I have to bring it up. Obvious connection here. What happened to Bryson Nesbitt? Like, because he was somebody that was considered maybe a top 50, top 100 guy. Am I wrong? Like last year? He's from North Carolina. He played with Drake May in North Carolina.
He was a top 150 guy. He missed some time. He was hurt.
Yeah.
I would also say
their offense must have stunk without Drake.
So, well, it's not just without Drake. Max Johnson, who was a transfer from Texas A&M, who they brought in to replace him, snapped his leg in the first game.
That's
tough. Jacoby Criswell got banged up at times. They had a whole quarterback carousel thing go. By the way, Max Johnson is the son of Brad Johnson. Total Belichick quarterback. I would not, from the outside looking in, I would not be surprised if he's Bill's quarterback this year. Like, if he was in the draft and Bill was here, I would be saying the Patriots are going to draft Max Johnson.
Yeah.
But, he got banged up. The quarterback play wasn't good. He's one of these guys, how I love to talk about this. How do you view, how much of a recency bias is there for teams watching him? Are you looking at 2023 or are you only looking at him in 2024? If you look at him in 2023, he's a high day 3 pick with upside. The other thing is, he doesn't block. He's a receiver. And maybe he develops into a blocker eventually like Hunter Henry did, but he is a pass-catching tight end.
So we have some breaking Patriots news.
Oh, okay.
And it's not positive breaking Patriots news. So Christian Barmore has been shut down for the season. He had I'll just read the statement out loud because I don't want to mince words here. The New England Patriots are placing defensive lineman Christian Barmore on the reserve non-football illness list after he experienced some reoccurring symptoms that required further evaluation. We appreciate everything Christian did to return to the team this season, but our top priority is Christian's health and well-being. We know that he will continue to receive tremendous care. We want to ensure that he gets the time he needs to come back stronger than ever. So my feelings on this are, first and foremost, obviously, thoughts are with Christian Barmore and hope everything is okay from that standpoint. I thought that watching him play since he came back from this issue was tough at times, and he just wasn't himself. He was clearly a shell of himself, as would be totally expected, given the circumstances. At 3-11, if he's starting to feel something that's not right, this is absolutely the right move for him in the organization long term. He needs to get healthy, which I hope he does, and then he needs a full off season to get his body back to where it was before this all happened. This is obviously tough news, though. I feel for him because I know he worked really hard to get back.
Yeah, and look, good thing that they caught whatever this reoccurrence is, right? And that he didn't go out there and play on it and risk getting hurt further. You hope he can be back next year with this kind of thing. You always wonder about the long-term nature of his career, but yeah, thoughts with him, and hopefully he can, get done what he needs to get done as quick as possible.
Yeah, look, I love watching Christian Barmore play. There was nothing more that guy needed to do this year. Right?
Yeah, we were talking about this at practice today. Like fact that he got back on the field, and I'm sure mentally as much as anything was huge for him to just climb past that. And now it's just he's got to do it again.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, that was a big one. We talked about this, I think, another time, but like these guys that they signed or extended in the offseason, that they were really expecting to be kind of like foundational elements of this team. Barmore, Duggar, Peppers, Ramondre, Onwenu. A lot of these guys were either hurt, had extenuating circumstances off the field, and they just didn't answer the buck in a lot of different ways. And it's not Barmore's fault, right? This is a rare blood condition is not his fault. But the point being that, when you sign these guys and you count on these guys to have that go by the wayside is really a big reason why they are where they are. Like if they had 2023 Christian Barmore, 2023 Jabril Peppers, 2023 Jawan Bentley, like do I think that they would be 5-10 wins better and in the playoffs? Like, no, of course not. But they would be a better team on defense for sure with those guys.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so a tough one for the Patriots there with Christian Barmore. But I'd like to reiterate, I actually think this is in some ways what's best for the player anyways. Like I think having him roll out there just wasn't right anyway.
And he even said when he first came back, like he wasn't in football shape.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was just like mental, just getting him back on the field so he got that.
Yeah.
Got over that hump.
All right, so let's get back to the last couple emails here after that. It's kind of depressing. But
I'll just bounce back. I was going to say on Bryson, don't sleep on Bryson Nesbitt as a draft pick. Just watch him. I know you don't always do this. Just watch him in 2023.
No, I watched him in 2023 with Drake already.
I already have watched him.
Yeah, and look, like he's, to me, is one of those players that can get up the seam. And as I like Hunter Henry a lot, I like Austin Hooper a lot, but they're not necessarily like explosive, like field stretching tight ends, right? That can do those sort of things. Drake May rifling throws up the seam to Bryce Nesbitt was like a regular thing at North Carolina over the last 2 years. And you just see statistically Nesbitt's like production with Drake versus this year without him there, it just fell off a cliff. So like he was like a 500 yards roughly, I think, in 22 and 23 with Drake May at North Carolina, which in college is really good tight end production. Yeah. You don't normally see a big receiving production from tight ends. So if you can get him in like the 5th or the 6th round because he had a down year, like even more reason to do it. Already has the connection with Drake. I'm sure Drake would love it. Like I'm sure he would lobby for it. I don't think they need a running back this high. So I don't think Amarian Hampton is really in their conversations too much because, he's going to be, probably top 50 draft pick. But Bryson Nesbitt seems like he would be a realistic target for the Patriots.
And so I couldn't remember the injury. He broke his wrist in November. Okay. So you figure he'll be back. He should be good off a wrist injury. You feel like he should be good. He'll probably be a Senior Bowl guy. I wouldn't be, or at least a Shrine Bowl guy.
Yeah, it might be. It'd be fun to see him at one of those games.
Not listed for either right now, but he'd be a kind of guy that would be good there.
Okay, a couple more things that I want to get to before we wrap it up.
Yep.
Got some emails, obviously getting some calls about Travis Hunter. He just won the Heisman Trophy. This is topical, obviously coming off the weekend and him winning the Heisman. I just want to...
Hell of a speech.
I just want to say, like, I love the kid. Like,
Great kid,
I love the guy. Like, I think he's a football nerd.
Leave his girlfriend alone.
Who said anything about his girlfriend?
People are all mad his girlfriend didn't stand up.
I thought you meant me. I was like,
no. It's like this whole thing on the internet that his girlfriend didn't stand up at the ceremony.
Jeez. Okay. People need to touch grass. I just like him.
No, he's got absolutely the right mentality.
Yeah, and I feel like he's, from everything that you hear out of Colorado about him, like he's like a film junkie. Like this guy doesn't listen to music because he's just watching.
He's you. He doesn't
Love
listen
it.
to music. He doesn't
love it.
go out. He doesn't do any. I think people pair. Obviously, Deion Sanders is a big personality, outgoing. He's very out there in the public, things like that. And I think people just subscribe that to Travis Hunter. There was a story where he doesn't go to parties, doesn't listen to music, doesn't go out. Like he watches film and he plays video games. That's all he does.
Yeah,
That's all he does.
I think Drake's kind of the same way. I think he's kind of the same way.
Composite of the two of us.
Yeah.
He watches film, plays video games.
Yeah, right. So I think both of them together would really get along.
They do seem like they'd get along. It does seem like it would be a good pairing. It was a good speech.
Yeah, it was a great speech. I think there will be we are going to do 5 months or whatever it is on, is he a wide receiver, is he a corner, can he play both ways, this, that, the other thing. Jake Lazar had a report, I believe it was a Sunday morning during Fox's pregame, that he polled some NFL GMs, and a lot of the GMs think he's a corner in the league, and that Jake Lazar even reported that he doesn't think that he's going to play a ton of receiver at all. It would probably just be mostly corner for a lot of teams. I still leave the door open to him playing receiver, one, because I think he has great receiver film, and two, because I think he might want to play receiver. So I'm still going to leave the door open to that. But the more that we get closer, the more that information that comes out about it does feel like the NFL views him as a corner on the whole.
I've said this. He is a better corner than receiver.
Agreed.
He's not a good receiver, but he's a better corner than
so,
receiver.
David, emails in, and I think we've said similar things about this before. And, he just said about Travis Hunter that he's a luxury item, that he's, Patriots drafting Hunter is like buying a Ferrari for a home that's in foreclosure. And we've used these types of analogies before. I hear that in a lot of ways. I know everybody is sort of like big on the offensive line, and I am too. It's the number one need on the team. Left tackle is the number one need on the team. But I still come back to my best player available thing. I still want them to take the best player available at a position of need. That's always what we have advocated for. It's not, we have this guard or this running back, Alex, rated higher than Will Campbell. We're not doing that. But between receiver, tackle, edge rusher, don't reach, right? Like, don't reach to try to fill a hole. I feel like that's how bad teams stay bad. So if you view Travis Hunter as a corner, it's a premium position, so I would at least could get behind that. And obviously, Gonzo and Travis Hunter would probably be pretty dominant. Yeah. But it's not. It doesn't exactly fit the big, best player at position need mold.
If he's not playing receiver, I'm not interested. That's just where, for the reasons you just said.
Yeah.
And if the league really views him as a corner, or many teams that view him highly as a corner, if he's on the board, it's not going to be like a quarterback, but you're going to get a ton of value for that pick if you move down.
Yeah, I agree with you. I honestly am also tempted. I kind of am tempted by Abdul Carter. I'm not going to lie.
Abdul Carter, and Hunter's a better player, but pound for pound, Carter makes more sense to me than Hunter does.
Yeah, it's a position of need.
Yeah.
It's a premium position.
Yeah.
Pass rusher off the edge. Right now, when you just look at their pass rush statistics, whether it's pressure rate, win rate, whatever, they're down near the bottom of the league in all of it. They don't pressure the quarterback. And when I look at the cornerback room, I actually think that their corners are decent. Christian Gonzalez is great. And then you kind of have a hierarchy there. I think Marcus Jones is a very capable slot corner. Yeah. We still are talking about the outside cornerback position and that being a little bit of a need.
Carlton Davis, 1 year, $12 million. Solved. You don't need a superstar over there.
No, and I definitely am still of the mind that I think Alex Austin might be able to do it.
Yeah.
And so you have, between those guys, the Joneses, Christian Gonzalez, Alex Austin, Jonathan Jones is a free agent, but if he comes back, I think that's a decent cornerback room. I really do.
For all their other issues, you can get by with that. The putting resource into that room, you're talking about a room going from maybe good to great.
Yeah.
Obviously, Gonzalez is great, but the piece around him.
Yeah.
When there's other positions that you need to pump serious assets into just to get them to good.
Yeah, it just feels to me like if you get the safety play that you're expecting, back from Duggar and Peppers. You get those guys back to the level that you're used to, and you keep this cornerback room intact, which is pretty good, I believe. Then if you add to the pass rush, like that's the bigger need, right? Like that's clearly the bigger need.
So I don't remember if I said this on this show last week, but I've said it somewhere. Like if you have Gonzalez, right, and we talk a lot about, all right, how do you maximize Drake May on offense, and what pick, what additions, what signing, maximize Drake May because he's your stud. That's who you're building around on that side of the ball. We can do the same exercise with Christian Gonzalez. How do you maximize Christian Gonzalez? And the one knock on Christian Gonzalez right now, and I think it's overblown, I would call it more of an observation than a knock, is that the on-ball production isn't tremendous, right?
Yeah.
He had a couple pass breakups last weekend, but he's not getting interceptions. He's not getting
got
pass
2
breakups.
picks this year,
But because nobody's thrown at him, and these quarterbacks have time to adjust.
He's also playing trail man. So, like, this is a big thing, I think, too, with the zone man corner thing. Like, when you have zone eyes, you have eyes in the backfield. So you have that ability to jump the football, right? Like, you have the ability to see the quarterback throw the football, have it leave his hand, and then ball hawk and trace the ball. Corners like, what made Stephon Gilmore's Defensive Player of the Year season so ridiculous was how many picks he had playing man-to-man the whole season.
Yeah.
So, like, that's really difficult to do.
Well, part of that was, and to my point, how do you maximize Gonzalez? It's not putting another corner on the other side. It's getting another pass rusher because with Gilmore, you had a pass rush, and a lot of quarterbacks, when you pressure them, their first instinct is just going to be, I know my top receiver's over here, I'm throwing it.
Yeah.
Like, I need to get rid of this ball. I'm going to get crushed. Buddy, go make a play.
Yeah.
And that's when, it's the pick in the Super Bowl. It's the pick in Super Bowl 53.
Right.
Where it's Van Noy, right? Is it Van Noy that's in his face?
they run a blitz.
They run a zero blitz, and Steph Gilmore gets to turn around and catch it like a center fielder.
Yeah.
That's how you maximize Gonzalez. It's not putting another corner on the other side. It's getting a pass rusher that's going to speed these quarterbacks up and force more bad throws to his side.
Agreed. I think their secondary is good enough. I think their secondary would be is good enough if they had a legit pass rush.
I'd like to see them add another boundary, physical, bigger corner just to kind of compete with Alex Austin for that second job. But that does not need to be a first-round pick.
All right, we'll take one more call, and then we're going to wrap it up. Jay is in Atlanta. What's up, Jay?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call here. You guys are going to do recency bias. I wanted to ask about Davion Williams out of TCU. And secondly, for my second question, I wanted to ask, I know in the first round, probably going to be tackle wide receiver. Second round, probably whichever we don't get in the first. For those 2/3, what do you think would be the best option for us to pick? And I'll take it offline, guys.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate the call. Do you, I'm not deep enough to know.
Yeah, so I haven't done a ton on Savion Williams. I some of the people who get in really deep really like him. TCU wide receiver, so you're going to have to get over the helmet.
No.
Big guy.
Jahan Dotson 2.0 is what I'm hearing.
Well, I was thinking more like Quentin Johnston.
Oh, that one's bad too. Both of them.
Much better athlete, much more explosive. He's quicker. He's not a straight line athlete. He hasn't played a ton. He's very raw. I got to pull up the exact number of games he's played, but he's a full projection. So this is a guy that's 6'4", 6'5", 220
out,
but he's like an early day 3 pick.
Okay, not, but to me, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but any receiver that we're handing this coaching staff that is a project or is raw or anything like that, until I build some confidence with the fact that they can develop at that position, I'm out.
I would call him as a prospect. Now we know how this turned out. As a prospect, I would call him a little Javon Baker-ish. And that's not being super familiar, but like you're drafting a guy who's big, who you're going to throw the ball down the field to.
Yeah.
If he's the only receiver they walk away with, no. If you're telling me that they got Luther Burden and this is maybe doubling up, them trying again to find an X, okay. Yeah, I guess I could see that. It wouldn't be my favorite thing, but I could see it. I will, to the second point, those 2/3, trade one. Trade one, move up. Move up in the second, move up from the second to the first. This is the same mistake they did last year. They had those 2/4. They were in position to move up. Instead, they moved down for Jalen Polk. They take Caden Wallace, and then they use them on Layden Robinson and Javon Baker. Use those picks, move up.
So I'm open to anything in terms of moving up like
Yeah.
that. I'm all for that. I also wonder if one of those 3rd round picks can be traded for a veteran player. Like I still will bang the table for that all day, every single day.
Or for a veteran player.
Like
that works too.
I keep coming back to the fact that, look, if you can't draft well, then you might as well just start trading picks for guys that you know can play in the league, right? Like in the way that this has gone throughout the NFL, like trading picks, like the value of the veteran players is going down, I would say.
Yeah.
Like you can start to get some real talent for those players, for those picks. So look, if you're wary of like certain blind spots that you have from an evaluation standpoint, or you don't love the draft or whatever the case may be, trade it. Like, trade it for a veteran player.
Here, do you want? We'll just do this live. You want the save? We both trust the Draft Network. They do a good job.
Yeah.
So here's what the Draft Network has on Savion Williams.
Oh,
since
boy.
I wasn't fully prepared.
Okay.
6'4", 225.
Okay.
Here's the summary. Savion Williams offers NFL teams a diverse and unique skill set at the wide receiver position, has a rare combination of size, explosiveness, and quickness to create explosive plays. Strengths: diverse release package, explosive, great short area quickness, position versatile, playmaker, ability to create explosive plays.
Oh.
Concerns:
Yeah. TCU.
Raw route runner,
Oh.
concentration drops.
Ooh.
So this was written before the season. Lack of production. I'll give you his production this year. It's all career highs. 60 catches, 611 yards, 6 touchdowns. He also ran the ball 51 times for 300 yards and 6 touchdowns.
Okay, so I love the big playability, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what you're looking for. It does sound a little Javon Baker-ish, right? Like splash play guy.
The running thing is interesting. I saw him run the ball a couple times this year.
I don't love the football. I don't love the conference. I don't. I've had this conversation with a lot of people at this point. It's Big 12, right?
Yeah.
So my biggest concern with drafting out of those conferences, drafting guys like Ted McMillan from Arizona, drafting a guy from TCU, none of the teams that they play on a consistent basis play NFL defense. Like, none of those teams are playing man-to-man at a high level. None of those teams are playing any sort of NFL-style press, right? Like, I'm not saying they never do it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's not their major. And so a lot of the time when you watch the film of these guys, they're just running into pockets of space against zone coverage and just catching balls over the middle of the field against like linebackers and safeties or whatever, catching throws underneath like off coverage or bail technique or whatever. And so much, it's hard to like find reps that translate to the league, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is an NFL rep. Like, he's getting pressed, he gets off press, he wins the route on time. Like, he's not hanging out forever on the line of scrimmage. It's really hard to find that, especially in those types of conferences. The Big 12, the old Pac-12, like those teams, it's all cover three, it's all quarters, it's all soft zone. Like that's worrisome to me with those teams.
So this is interesting because, again, I one of the few guys that like I wasn't ready on, and I'm looking at some of the comps here. So he started playing wildcat quarterback and running back late in the year. That's where all those carries came from. It's Jim Nagy. Jim Nagy's comp is Cordero Patterson. At that size, if he's, he ran the ball 51 times. We do like Cordero.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try to watch him more. Maybe
do your job.
I know
like you like to say to me.
Maybe
all
he's
right?
my recency bias guy next week because
my recency bias guy this week. Do you have one?
I do.
I'll go really quick.
Okay.
I kind of like Isaiah Bond.
Of course you do. He's fast. But he's only fast.
He's fast.
So we're doing Taekwon again.
I'm not letting you say that. I'm not letting you say that.
Tell me what's the difference?
Because Texas. That's the difference.
Baylor is in Texas.
Okay, but it's not Texas. All right? Like, you asked me, we're going to relate this. Then I have one more thing that I really want to bring up. I know I do this every show.
Yeah.
You asked me who are the players in the college football playoff that could gain the most.
Yeah.
Okay? There's some obvious ones at the top of the draft.
Yeah.
Abdul Carter, Connor Lee, like guys like that, if they have in stellar college football playoffs, they're going to help their stock. To me, Isaiah Bond's going to see some real coverage now, right? Like he's going to see.
He's going to get Clemson round one.
So they're going to see some, one thing that your boy Dabo can do is coach DBs. Like that's the one thing that he's good at.
Yeah.
So
Brett Venables a hell of a coach.
So let's see what he does. I love the speed. I love the speed. I
What else?
I love the separation ability.
That's speed. What else?
But to me, I just like, I think the skill set translates. Like, I think he's going to.
What is the skill set besides speed?
Speed.
So we're doing Taekwon again.
Drake needs somebody that can win a go ball. That's all I'm saying.
Well, it sounds like Savion Williams pretty fast too. And
Isaiah
he
Bond
can
can do
change
it.
direction. So I'm fascinated by this guy. I still don't know how I feel about him as a Patriot. Elijah Roberts from SMU.
Yeah.
So
you've been talking to me about this guy for
we
days.
had one conversation about him.
No, it's been days.
So almost everywhere he's listed at 295. ESPN has him at 278, 6'4", 278. Everywhere else him at 295. He's among the nation's leaders in pressures. Like, he gets after the quarterback. I'm like thinking, okay, defensive end. He's like standing up. He's playing outside linebacker at least 285, 290 pounds.
Keon White.
He's getting after the quarterback. But he's not built like Keon White. Keon White doesn't like. Elijah Roberts looks like a defensive end. Like, he looks like a 3-4 end, but he's standing up and chasing down running backs in the backfield and pursuing.
You're literally
quarterbacks
describing Keon White.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know.
I'm not saying that's as a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, Keon White's a good football
Well,
player.
okay, so here's the other weird. I guess this is like Keon White. You'd think like big physical guy, right? Wins with power. You can't defend the run.
Keon. This is
My
just
comfort
Keon
was
White.
Byron Cowart.
This is just Keon
He's not
White.
as explosive as Keon White is.
All right.
All right, fine. I'll give you another one.
No.
Michael
we gotta
Kamara
go.
from Indiana.
I don't know who that
Second
is.
in the nation in pressures.
Oh, you've
high
told me
motor,
about this guy too. So
6'1", 260. What do you do with him? Like, undersized edge rusher, but he's
260 is
electric.
not too undersized in
6'1",
today's
260.
Oh, yeah, the length is going to be an issue.
Yeah. He's kind of like, remember Mo Kamara last year in
Yeah,
Colorado State?
you liked him too.
I don't think they're related. I did like him.
Okay, last thing.
Who wins college football playoff?
No, not that.
I want that take from you.
So this is Todd emailing in, and full disclosure, I'm sitting at a bar in Arizona on Saturday.
Yeah.
And I sit down, and there's a what are those things that they call what they put on the table? That's like an advertisement, like like the little
Placard?
the little placard.
Yeah.
Sure. At the table, and I sit down, and this guy that Todd emails in is on the placard,
Yeah.
and he's standing there with this big plate with this like giant hamburger on it, and I texted the picture to Barth instantly because it's the Scata Burger, baby. It's Cam Scataboo.
Welcome to Scatabo. Welcome to the NFL. Welcome to the NIL era.
Yeah, so Cam Scataboo.
Did you get it?
No, I couldn't get it. It had so much dairy in it. You know that.
All
But Cam Scataboo has a placard with his face on it, and he's standing there at the burger, and it's the Scata Burger right next to Arizona State. And the emailer asked, if you're sitting there in the fourth round and Scataboo is there, are you taking him?
I think there's going to be better backs there than him at that point, but I'm not
Oh,
opposed.
come on. You love him.
I do. I love every running back in this draft. This is an insane running back draft.
You love him, though.
I like a lot of these backs. I'll take Kyle
You
Monangai over
compared
him.
him to
He's
Mike Allstott.
in
who
that
I
game.
know you
in
love.
that game. And I said, I'm getting carried away here. Rocket Sanders will be on the board at that point. Phil Maffa will be on the board at that point. I like Cam Scataboo. I think his contact balance might be second to Genty in this draft. Like, he does not, the first tackler never brings him down. Oh, it's in the Big 12. We'll see him in the playoff. We'll see what it looks like. But he's also a capable receiver. He's not James White, but he's a capable receiver. He's a good pass blocker. And they run some wildcat quarterback stuff with him. Not saying that I would do that here, but like, if you want to start doing some of that weird gadget stuff with Drake May, he's going to be a good guy to have in the backfield with him. He fits the mold of this running back they have of like a guy who can do a little bit of everything. We see it with Antonio Gibson. We obviously know with Ramondre Stevenson. He fits that mold. He'd be another good piece. I like him. I wouldn't be upset if they draft him. I think just he doesn't have that elite level athleticism. He's also a little bit older. That caps his ceiling. He has more carries on him. So that's why if we're talking about the fourth round, there might be some other guys I'd look at. But if they got him in like the sixth, that'd be a great pick. And it would mean they address some other things a little higher up in the draft.
Oregon wins.
It's going to be Oregon. My preseason pick was Ohio State, so like I'm sticking with that out of default. But Ryan Day, Ohio State is the best roster in the tournament. Ohio State is the most talent in the tournament. I don't know if they can overcome Ryan Day, and
their quarterback stinks.
I think some of that's the coaching. He's so much worse now than he was at Kansas State.
Quarterback's bad.
I think that Oregon has the better coach by far. How'd you feel about him making an NFL jump? I've been getting that question.
I was gonna say that if I was Dan Lanning, if I was an NFL team that had an opening this offseason, one of my calls would be throwing a bag at Dan Lanning. I think he's just a great coach.
So
great defensive mind, great motivator.
Since 2000, there's only 2 coaches that have had their first NFL job as a head job coming from college with a record over 500.
Jim
Harbaugh and Bill O'Brien.
Oh, yeah.
And there's as a rule of thumb, primary college coaches do not have success in the NFL.
Correct.
I generally believe that. I would rather hire somebody with NFL experience from any NFL team. That being said, if anybody right now is making the jump from the college to the pros, it's Dan Lanning.
So Dan Lanning, really quickly, reminds me a little bit of the defense's version of Sean McVay. He has a great schemer on the defensive side of the ball. That's an elite trait.
But he can also get away from this Mickey Mouse offense he's running.
But he also kind of has that motivator and that sort of leader
of men. People have called
him
the college Dan Campbell.
But I think that he's smarter than Dan Campbell.
Well, in terms of that leadership, leader
right.
of
That's
men,
why I went to
kind
McVay,
of hardcore
because I feel
guy.
like McVay is both.
McVay has that too. No, there's
McVay's the full
definitely
package.
Some McVay in there, and he's in the Nick Saban Kirby Smart tree.
Yeah, good coach.
Dan Lanning to me is the best coach in college football right now. I don't think it's close. You can have Lane, you can have Sark, you can have Kirby, and I know some of those guys have rings.
Kirby's a legend.
I think Dan Lanning's the best coach in college football. Right?
Kirby's good.
Yeah, how much control does he have of his program?
Kirby's stamped.
How much control does he have of his program?
Kirby's stamped.
Kirby's a great coach. I'm not saying he's not a great coach. If I could pick any coach in college football right now to start a program with, it's Dan Lanning.
All right. We can finally wrap now. You got all your college football takes out.
I have more, but for now.
Yeah, you got it out for now.
You're done doing Tyquan Thornton again?
Oh, God, don't. No, he's better than Tyquan.
Why? You haven't told me why.
I don't have a good reason. I just think eye test he's better.
So he's faster?
No, he's just he's not as frail.
I think he weighs 160 pounds.
All right.
And I like Isaiah Bond. He caught the touchdown.
Come on, we got to go. All right. Just
180? Wow.
Next week we will have a show. We're going to be doing our same time, usual time on Thursday, barring scheduling and stuff like that for the team. But we will have a show next week. So we'll see you guys next Thursday. We'll keep you updated on the time if we have to move it around, but we will have a show during the holidays. So we'll see you guys then.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check Patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.